Like,
This council work session to order. It is Wednesday, November 16th. The time is 2 p.m. I'll go ahead and open it up for visitor comments. You have a comment? You want to state your name for the record and keep it to 3 minutes or less. Go ahead, Stan. Come on up.
you sit down there. Yeah, my name's Stan Quixote, in St. Helens for 51 years, and we used to always be able to burn this time of year. Right now, the city council evidently allowed the city to burn in the last part of October to the 13th of November. However, if you call up the burn permit, which evidently any of you people don't burn in the same city of St. Helens, the recording for 4800 says no burning in the city of St. Helens or Columbia City. Said that all the way up to the 13th. So even though everyone thought they could burn, if you call the burn line, you can't burn. So because of that, all my yard debris is still sitting there waiting to be burned. And so what I'd like to have happen is the city authorize an extension of the burn permit that expired on the 13th. And then whoever does that authorization then communicate with the fire department so that they can change their recording that says it's okay to burn in the city of St. Helens. So that's my request.
Appreciate that. Yeah, we're unaware that the fire department didn't get that message because we did reach out.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to help facilitate that request in a sense, because I've heard a lot of people, including my neighbors, have went into do a few burn piles that they weren't able to do in October because of the severe weather. Either it was too hot or it was raining cats and dogs and nothing would burn. So yeah, see that. So I'd really like to honor that request of extending the burn period for another 2 weeks.
I was just looking at dates and pulled them up. I think through December 4th would be 2.5, basically 2.5 weeks. Get the message over to Columbia River Fire District ASAP. From whenever they can post that date tomorrow to December 4th and let them know that the recording was not reflecting.
They're aware of it because I went to them yesterday and I went to John yesterday. So yes, the first one that pointed fingers, they were the first ones. So
We're the first ones to respond.
right. Well, yeah. So they told me that it's up to the city because the city controls the situation. So if the city would extend it to December 4th. And the recording will start tomorrow. Hopefully that says it's okay to burn if the DEQ from Portland allows it, because that's the biggest hurdle that we have is the weather in Portland dictates whether we can burn out here in Columbia County, which is also weird, but that's the way it always has been.
Yep. Thank you for stepping
All
forward.
right, thank you. So I'll look forward to seeing a message tomorrow on the recording. Thank you.
Not gonna be enough time to meet with the RFR, so we need to give at least another day.
Okay, we'll go. It's supposed to stay dry till Monday, so.
Let's shoot for maybe Friday, starting or Saturday. Whatever.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Yeah, it's outdoor turkey roast this year. All right, go ahead, come on up.
My name is Ron Trombley. The city has a failed $2 million or on Pittsburgh Road. The city has spent 2 years in litigation and didn't produce anything towards the reservoir's solution. My opinion that this time was spent with the involved parties deciding on what part of failure was each share. The parties are all claiming no liability, and that was their stated opinion. My opinion that they all had something to do with the failure. The lawyers representing the clients aren't compromising, thereby holding to no liability position. Eventually, they agreed to refund the money they received for their performance in the 7449 contracted rehabilitation project. They avoided paying any penalties for the damage inflicted on the reservoir. The city of St. Helens desired to know what happened at the reservoir and hired Walker Consultants to investigate the reservoir for cause and responsibility. The report was produced and is now seen that it's not welcomed. It wasn't great news for some. I asked for a copy of the report of what the report determined. I was told the report was not available to me. I thought the report would be an explanation of what had occurred during the repair. But the city decided that this information was to be kept secret. The discovery of cause and responsibility was the case of everyone deciding there was too much enlightenment for my eyes to see. Someone once asked me why my involvement. It began over 6 years ago from an answer to a question and then a statement made to me. I realized I had to be concerned and I needed to stay aware of the city's actions. Remember, the settlement wasn't signed until after receiving the Walker report. The withholding of the Walker report may not be criminal, but it is wrong. It's even possible that the lawyers might be worried their part would be a case of omission. So release the Walker report and let's see what has transpired. So, thank you.
I'll just say that there is no smoking gun in that report, that we go through deposition with legal. And that the agreement from both sides was that we came to a settlement of $600,000 on that project. And I'm not gonna play the back and forth with you. If you would like to continue to pursue, you can, but there is no smoking gun, no hidden agenda on the city's part. When you go through depot and you're dealing with attorneys, when you have these type of agreements, this is what the resolution becomes. It's not uncommon. It happens in a lot of different cities, just so you know, Ron. I just want to let you know that for a fact, okay?
So no.
Yes.
The visual inspection of the inside of that reservoir, there's definitely a lot of damage, misengineering, and obviously construction mistakes. Somebody ought to be responsible for all that, because if it had been left leaking but not damaged, it could be repaired, or it's beyond repair now. Somebody should be responsible for the damage. Patrick and I were in there and seeing what happened. One thing that has not been brought up publicly is the membrane was pushed away from the concrete by inflowing water through the concrete. So we have an outward leak and an inward leak. The inward leak, do we know, and I have not seen any reports that say that was not contaminated. We could have been having contaminated water in our drinking supply.
These are issues that are going all the way back to installation. To the installation of that reservoir, which was in the late 50s or the 60s or somewhere in that vicinity. And so to lay blame on anyone who's contemporary on a staff is not a fair thing. That's what we inherited as we volunteered for this job.
Not fix it.
And I just want to clean up something that I think I understand where you're getting your information from. Now it's pretty evidently clear. Probably a counselor that's on here who would make anybody aware because he felt that he was wrong in a drainage issue over his house and continued to pursue a lawsuit against the city and even went and it was in the favor of the city twice. So again, what I stated at first, I will stick with that statement.
So we want no response.
Ron,
I asked you if you wanted my response.
sure, come on up. Because you are a citizen. I will.
You say there's no smoking gun. That's a ridiculous statement to me. Statement is that you could clarify this whole dang thing, it's like just releasing that report. You signed this, you signed a settlement. There is nothing in that settlement that says the Walker report would not be.
And again, I'm not gonna back and forth.
Everything that I've ever gotten copied from your own paperwork.
Okay. Again, I'm not gonna back and forth with you.
Yeah.
on this.
But I just want to know.
What you were
Because I
insinuating,
disagree with what you guys.
that's what you were insinuating, so that's why I said,
I'm not insinuating anything. The mistakes that were all made, those two people aren't here anymore.
so again, Ron, I'm just trying to state
You
to
know,
you that in that
Yeah.
report, because you insinuate there is, that the city is hiding something.
that's the part that irritates me. See, if you told me there's no smoking gun, but there is no smoking gun,
So Ron,
because you will not
Ron,
release the Walker
Ron,
report.
if the city was liable, we wouldn't have been awarded the monies.
That-
Okay,
That was.
it's a construction error. The
Well,
contract.
We all- I.
Something dying over there.
We have.
And not
And I
giving
made
me
a report, okay, we're done, okay,
we're done.
Mohammed,
Yeah, just Mr. Mayor and Mr. Ron, so the fact of the matter, this is a 1924 reservoir. You have multiple factors, technical and non-technical is a failed. It's an end of life of a product, pretty much, right? There is multiple factors, right, the installation. We can dig into this for the end of time, and guess what? There is rule, not a specific person reason that this has failed. We have settled, we're not hiding the report because we want to, it's an advice from our city, legal team, and last but not least, we are in the process of building a new reservoir, and we are 50% there, and we're gonna get it done and fixed, and things will be great. Dwelling on the past, it's not gonna achieve it. We moved on beyond that, and again, it's a 1924 product that is reached the end of life a long time ago, and it will continue to fail, whether it's done right or not, there was. Let's move on. A little bit, really happy that we're working very hard on making this project right and bring it back to life, and it is going great, so. I hope we can, move forward.
Thank you.
Dwelling on the past.
all right, elevator comments, come on up. For the record.
Well, somebody else.
Me. I'm a major. Howard Blumenthal, City of St. or resident of the City of St. Collins, just a couple of my personal comments. I got a conversation with Shauna Dugan the other day. And she told me that somebody possibly had fallen or tripped on our railroad tie staircase. And I was kind of surprised to hear that. Up until this year, I've always done the maintenance as it says in the Parks and Trails Master Plan that Friends of Nob Hill managed the maintenance of the park. And in the last 4 or 5 years, we haven't even had a washout because of the work that I've done on trying to maintain that, the gravel at the top of the staircase. Last year after Halloween Town was done, I spent over 6 to 8 hours to rebuild the top of that staircase to keep it from washing out again, as I always do. I started off with trying to set up meetings to talk to people about that ahead of time this year, and I was kind of stonewalled. I did have a meeting with John and a couple of other people, but they really didn't listen to what I had to say, that when you put 3,000 to 5,000 people up and down that staircase, the natural tendency with that trail being so steep is that gravel goes downhill. And the year before, about every week or 2 weeks, I would have to go in there and shovel the gravel back up the hill, rake the gravel back up the hill. And this year, I just wasn't around for a few weekends. I felt like I was actually driven out of the park a little bit, but people were thinking I was wrapping people when I wasn't even in the park. And so I was very shocked to hear that somebody had fallen. Most of the time when I would do that type of a repair, it would last 2 to 3 months before I would rake it and do everything again. During Halloween Town, you almost need to do it weekly, if not every other week. The top 2 stairs, almost 3, were totally covered in gravel. And when I talked to Shauna, I met with the risk assessment guy today. They were like, we can't put any more gravel. We're going to have to rake it all off. And I started saying, well, what about the water that goes down there? How are we going to control that? And they started bringing up once again the budget, that we don't have money. We only have 2 city parks people. They don't have time to go in there and do what I do to try to make that trail not wash out. And so what I'm here to say is,
We got nothing from Halloween Town the year before. I don't know if we're gonna get anything for the park this year from Halloween Town. But really, if the trail at that area is taking a heavy beating and needs to be worked on, isn't there a way to get some money back and for me not to be told, hey, the city doesn't have any money? And so that's kind of my dilemma. I'll be bringing some of this up with the Parks Department. Since you guys cut us back to only 3 minutes and I'm just about out of time, but I thought I would bring that to your attention. That's kind of a maddening fact when I hear that our city employees say, we don't have time to make it. I volunteered to do it. I've been doing it, but why should I knock myself out and have to do double or triple the amount of maintenance on there with, no real thank you or anything, and they don't listen. So I guess my 3 minutes are up. And once again, this is the second time I've always said, what is in it for Nob Hill, having that type of people in the park for Halloween Town? Once again, it looks like everybody's just gonna be quiet and not say one word.
Thank you, Howie. Being a Parks liaison, I did at one time approach the Parks Commission and on my report and submitted a 30-page document of standards of trails and right-of-ways in parks and other areas. And with that, it talked about the type of gravel to be used around stairways, width of trails, safety issues, or whatever. I received that document. I inquired about Portland Parks because it was the only document in the nation that had standards and codes for trails. And I thought that would be appropriate to share with not only the Parks Commission, but with the staff as well. So I've submitted that to Shauna at that time. And I don't know if you recall when that happened or not, when that document was already there. But that's the way things should be. So it prevents people from falling and suing the city. And that's exactly why I did that.
People just needed to do more maintenance on that during that particular event.
So gravel is very tricky.
It is.
And I can't speak for Shauna and our, whoever parks guy you met with. Gravel is very tricky and it will continue. It doesn't matter what you do. Because
It's labor intensive.
I build landscape paths and gravel and trying to put a border. Edgy material, gravel continues to kick over. And it's gonna continue to kick on top of those railroad ties, which everybody knows, rock on top of a hard surface can be slippery, especially when you're going forward and trying to propel yourself, your foot could slide out. That's probably why they're talking about the removal of gravel.
Especially if there's
Nothing to deal with maintenance, you can maintain it, and the first kid that comes along wants to drag your feet. In a matter of 30 seconds of you leaving. Wait, I'm not gonna go back and forth with everybody today. I'm just trying to state. So I will find out, I will follow up.
Yes.
I will let you know more. Okay?
Please attend the next Parks meeting.
Any other public comment? Come on, state your name for the record, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sierra Trask, Director of People. Do I just start one?
Sure, Sarah.
So I'm excited to let everybody know that we're doing our annual Keep It Local for the Holidays campaign, which perhaps you've seen it before. Where basically every time someone spends $10 at one of our participating businesses, they get a stamp off their Wonderland card. And I just wanted to let everyone know that we're kicking it off this Friday. And so this year we have a record-breaking 88 participating businesses in the county. And so this form shows, as you can see, St. Helens is very well represented. 38 of our 88 participating businesses are St. Helens businesses. And so we're very excited to launch this. And last year we brought in $391,000 of local spending with the campaign. which was record breaking, because before that, the record was 90,000. So people are excited to spend local here for the holidays. And then the form that Amara helped pass out for me is that we're doing a new thing this year called the 31 Days of Deals card. Which basically how that works is that when you open it up, unfold it, it's just like a scratch off card. And you scratch off each tile and it reveals a deal to a local business. So it's kind of a fun way to get people to be local too this year. And so part of me going around is that I'm taking pre-orders if you're interested. So I'll just pass this form around if you want to. In your spare time, fill it out and pre-order any. They're just $10 and $1, $2 depending if you order like 50, and then they'll be $2 to ship. But yeah, so we're excited to have this launch, and then we'll also be selling them in stores. And this has over $900 of savings to local businesses. So I just wanted to let everybody know that our program is always here, part of the Columbia Economic Team, and we promote people to shop, taste, play local, and we're going to do that really well this year again for the holidays. So if you have any questions, because you're going to still see County be blue soon.
Yeah, I do have, yeah, I'm not, so you are passing around that I, as an individual, want to order ahead.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and additionally, that I would encourage if the city wants to gift them to employees, I think it makes a great gift idea as well.
What could you win on there? Like, what's the?
So the 31 days of deals is you get a deal every single day, and so you scratch off a deal, so maybe like one of the days would be like 10% off at this business, or get it. For example, in Benoni is get a free sack of potatoes when you walk in, and fun things like that. And additionally, the Wonderland card, the prize for that, and the reason why people get really excited is it's a chance to win $1,500 and over 25 other prizes donated by local businesses across the county.
Very, very genius. I love it.
Yeah, we love to spread the holiday cheer.
Good idea.
Well, if there's ever any questions, you can definitely reach out to me. My email is part of the Columbia Economic Team here at ColumbiaCountyOregon.com.
One question, are you gonna have these somewhere around town that people could purchase as
Yes.
well?
Yeah, they're coming all the way. They just survived a hurricane in Florida.
Yes.
So they're the only place I can make them. And so they're coming this Friday. And then we're
Yeah.
gonna have some sales locations. So if you follow Keep It Local Columbia County on Facebook or Instagram, I have a whole list. I'll be.
So obviously, like maybe some of your sponsors, maybe like One Credit Union or somebody like that will have these for sale.
I don't think Wana will, but Richardson's will, and then some of the participating businesses on that big 88.
Yes.
We're excited.
Yes.
Cool.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Be local for the holidays.
Hey, any other visitor comments? All right, let's go on to our first item on the agenda, which is financial first quarter report from John Willis.
Really, first 4-month report.
Yes.
That's true. Because it took me an extra month. Trimester. The trimester. No. It's the first trimester. Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Ellis, if you don't already know, and I'm the contract interim finance director. So if you see ICD down there, that's what that means. It's not a bomb.
They put record, you were the city financial director prior to.
You're right.
your-
Yes. Back in 2016, I retired, and I really appreciate this.
John, really appreciate you coming
Yeah.
and helping us out.
Yeah.
I just want to say that on behalf of this council that we
Oh.
really do appreciate it. Yes.
Well, you haven't seen it before yet.
Yes, yeah, well, if it's the one that we got the pack, I've seen it.
Yeah, that's a
But
written.
no, but I mean, that's why I think we're glad that we have somebody.
Yeah, so-
Yeah, stuff, thank you.
So on the, yes, on your, in front of you, you should see the PowerPoint. Exhibit C and D I updated because they caught a couple last minute things, so added, and I'm sure that won't stop, there'll be some more stuff, but, and then for your, I realized, I started putting this on the PowerPoint, I said, no, let's just talk,
Yeah.
So I gave you a 5-page, 2-sided, so it's really 3 pages, line item, of all the adjustments that have been identified that we recommend, And just for the record, that, a lot of these adjustments are operational imperatives, no, so that, but, so, with that, yeah, so the agenda today. I'm gonna report the objective, we give you some background and discuss some of the opportunities. And then go over the recommended budget amendments. You get summary of the impacts. What's band and fund balance gonna look like now, on June 30th, 2023. And then a conclusion of from all our meetings, and then what's next. So,
Great.
and then there's my old shell oil. You tell them what you're gonna tell them. Tell them and then tell them what you told them. No, I skipped out tell them that. Oh, hey. So, okay, so the objective is just to present amendments. Where are you? You know, where are you? What's your condition after the first quarter? Now, keep in mind, you know, budget just is a roadmap. It's, you know, you hope you stay within there, but there was some opportunities with the last flow of the information on the budget that left staff confused, you know, so anyway. So that's where I came in. So John and I went and met with all the departments. I met with them multiple times. And we presented them a lot of different detailed reports to help them get perspective of, you know, what the expenditure flows are, what the revenue flows are, and where they sit with their budget and what's in their budget. Unfortunately, you know, one of the confusing things for them was, oh, I didn't bring my prop. It was the actual budget. The printed document had some lines that were not properly stated. The, you know, summaries were a little off, you know, yeah. So, well, you know, one of the big things that was brought up in the, you know, in the meetings was you collapse some accounts, and they really like those accounts so they can follow and monitor, because they're used to that, you know, and then it got collapsed. Then they didn't know, well, where do we code this? You know, do we have it budgeted? You know, and so on. So, but I'm jumping ahead of myself. So, so basically we went out on the road, and first thing we asked them was assess the communications, you know, what kind of services have you received, what's lacking, you know, just be dirt honest, you know, just be blunt honest, you know, so. Yeah, and they were. So, and then we went ahead and brought out the details, you know, which, anybody who was sitting on the council when I was finance director, glaze over, and then after a half hour, and I was done. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, so those are the experiences. So, but the devil's in the detail, you know, and transparency's in the detail as well, you know. So, and the objective of any budget is, as well as just being a roadmap, it should be transparent enough to understand where the money's coming from, where it's being spent, and it shouldn't, you know, and it should be a mystery. So, and you know, the budget looked fine. I mean, overall, you know, but you know, when you get to the details, it is a little off. Yeah, it was a little blurry, but there seemed to be a lot of changes near the end. So, and that really confused them, you know, so, one of the big questions, well, I'll go ahead. One of the big question was, you know, do we have a budget that meets our staffing complement? You know, that was one of the concerns, you know, so, you know, we've scrubbed through all that. We know that, that their complements that finally end up in the budget reflect the actual budget that's put in there. And as well as, I haven't done all the calculations there, but it appears also that it had incorporated a lot of the costs that are reflected in the last labor negotiations. So it should be, there might be a little adjustment here or there for that, but it's probably pretty, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those changes were very frustrating, that, you know,
Yeah.
the entire council pressed that. So.
So anyway, so we talked about, potential changes to the budget presentation, so it can enhance control and monitor the budget. We talked about budget amendments, if, you have amendments between the lines within the categories. And even between categories, at a certain dollar level, then all it requires is the council do a resolution, which require a public hearing. But then when you start going into contingency and you're hitting 10 or 15%, then you need a public hearing. I would recommend as you go on that you do a public hearing on this, but I'm jumping ahead again, so. But I would say it's not the time to make the adjustments because there still might be more coming. And it'd be good to make sure you got everything before you go have a public hearing. So, and especially when we start working on modeling and forecasting, of the changes that were done. So in the CIP, we, a lot of the costs that were outlined in the 5-year CIP, well, not a lot, but some of it was not properly reflected in the budget. So we had to make that clearer too. So we added a lot of lines for the project so they can easily discern how much you're going to spend on a project, how much you have spent, so on as a separate line instead of having them all lumped into capital improvements.
Sure.
So, and one of my most frustrating things was trying to figure out what 10.5 million in miscellaneous income in water was, sewer, or 7 million miscellaneous income in economic development. That wasn't very, very clear. So, but now it's crystal clear. So
That was just normal.
no, well, if it's miscellaneous revenue, then you wouldn't miss it. So, and that's a lot of money not to miss.
We budgeted. No,
Yeah, so we're adding a lot of lines to really break that out and make it more transparent. Well, not a lot of lines, but I would say I have about, 50 lines of.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I mean, we got into pies a while ago. Back on budgeting and it was easy for a group to look at as a whole, but it wasn't, yeah. So,
Right, well, yeah, so it depends on what level, you're doing the presentation and the budget, so,
yes.
I'm lean more to detail, I think, I'm not the usual finance director, but then again, I'm not the most innovative either. If it ain't broke, I fix it.
Conservative, I like it. It's really responsible.
Yes.
Over the years, we've had an accountant who was going over these budgets and everything's supposed to have been okay. Should the accountant have caught these problems? Because we just rehired the same accountant.
Oh, you had an audit just on the budget, or was it an annual audit?
Annual audit.
Oh, the annual audit wouldn't, the budget is it's a living and breathing, but it's also an act of council. And, basically, if it's not, egregious, I'm saying that.
Yes, egregious.
Then the auditors won't really, they'll take it as you gave that authority, so be it, kind of.
So they wouldn't have caught.
No, not necessarily, no. And back in August, I did a quick blush and John asked me to look at it, and because he was, I'm concerned about, is it properly reflected based on the budget, based on the resolution or resolution that was adopted.
Sure.
And you were out about 20-something thousand, so that's not bad, really. What was, but when it was illustrated in the book, it missed numbers or they were slower or the subtotals didn't quite total because these things here, I download the information, put it in Excel, and I have this, if you guys want a copy of it, I'll go ahead and distribute to it. I have a 35-page document that has every line, but it has the beginning fund balance, the expenditures, the revenues for last year budget, adopted and approved, amended this year, and then the expenditures. So and that's a tool. That's one of the tools that we use. and it ties to the ordinance, or I mean, the resolution that was adopted by council. So,
Does this operation here forensic audit? The last 7 years to find out what all has happened?
well, I'm not doing a forensic audit.
I know you.
I want to make that first clear, make sure we all understand that.
We should have that done. Oh, this is over and beyond what you're doing.
No, I don't necessarily think it's, okay, if you're asking if money disappeared, I don't see it. I mean, it takes a while to drill down on some of the reclasses that Matt has done over and over again, but other than that, you finally find the source document, you finally understand, it just takes time. And I don't know exactly if that's because of the new system they put in or not.
The issue was the constant change in budget. The numbers that you see changed over and over a bunch of times.
Right,
At the tail end of him being here was our issue.
right,
That was our issue.
yeah.
Not whether or not money was
Yes.
lost.
Yeah, okay, yeah, well, I don't see that. I mean,
Yeah.
I see some things that go, whoa, and I dig down on it. I go down that rabbit hole, it might take me a couple hours to finish it, but.
Yeah.
And then I go, okay, now I can go back to,
We appreciate that, thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but 20,000 on 87
million, yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not
So it's all sitting. No, it's all sitting in the proper funds that you had in your budget, and it's just like, for example, the one big thing is, well, not big thing, but only 18,000 of it was the dock side services. He moved it over to tourism. Well, first of all, I don't know why you would do that, because it's the dock side, other than if you have some major improvements, is the cash flow,
Sure.
positive. So he moved it over there, but it was after the ordinance. After the resolution,
Yes.
or maybe it was before the resolution, but it didn't get caught by in the resolution.
Okay.
Recollect, what is the resolution you're
June 1st,
resolution?
yeah, the June 1st, adopt the budget, the budget committee recommends, and the council adopts in the public hearing, and that was on June 1st of this year.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm following.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Oh, it's okay.
yeah.
John,
Yeah.
going back to operational. We have kind of a budget that Matt had control of and he dies. So there's zero personal, how easy, I mean, and your description is it wasn't easy to track through and find out what was actually happening. Could you make suggestions so our
Oh,
budget
absolutely.
process is whoever takes over can say instantly get clipped in, because you spent a huge amount of time trying to decipher.
Had the first recommendation. Tell them, when they make a journal entry, they have a document attached to a piece of paper in a file. I mean, I think Matt was very smart. I remember, he was a very smart person, so, I mean, I'm sure he held it all in his head, but it's not in my head.
And there, that the person has the, right to keep numbers however they see fit. Is that correct? Or is there like?
No, yeah, I don't think there's but the OMFOA or GFOA, Oregon Municipal, I can say, that's not municipal, Oregon Government Finance Association.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, they have best practices.
But technically, he just wasn't doing anything wrong. It was just the way that was the way he does.
Right. Well, yeah, there's some things I still don't understand, like, he got rid of 2 perfectly fine internal service funds that were self-feeding to maintain facilities and equipment. But I know you went over to leasing a lot of the equipment and, so, and then the IT, so, but anyway, that's my own, I set those up when I came here and so it was always, you had a
Sure.
strategy to draw a little bit of money from everybody over time, so when their computer goes, you can replace it and so on. And I imagine it will be erected or restructured next year in the budget. So, but I don't know how that will look and like.
Yeah.
So, but that would be, yeah, I can't find why. Because he was such I didn't keep, the printed paper and I looked through files and I'm still waiting for finding the treasure trove. But, oh, okay, that makes sense, because after I beat my head on this a little while, I can rationalize, I can understand.
Sure.
Because he's trying to streamline things to be very efficient. Unfortunately, while it was efficient for him, it wasn't for the departments.
And it wasn't necessarily transparent for everyone
No,
to understand. Yeah,
right, yeah,
that makes
so. But that's, I'm still going down rabbit holes, but. But that's, now I'm working toward getting everything to the auditors and.
No, I'm sure it's helping that you're starting to maybe have an understanding of, because
Yeah.
brains work differently, and then when you can start to understand where a person may be going, you can even sometimes it makes it easier. Is it getting a little bit easier for you?
Yeah, yeah, well, the encode, Taylor encode, it has a couple bells and whistles in it that are phenomenal. That was a really, I think that was a good move. Unfortunately, though, there is also, there's also a little.
There are definitely some errors there, though, for
Yeah.
transparency and for us, and that's why we.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, okay, so, and that's one area we're working on is the modeling and forecasting. So I'll have something together. It might be as I disappear from here and a new person emerges. But it will, the initial blush John will have and we'll go over it. And I will-
We're called out to the top 3 things. My first one was hiring of a financial director. That's my most important for the year. Yes,
Yeah, so, well, I know it's gonna be tough,
yes.
Competitive. Yeah, I don't, yeah.
We have no receipts no paper receipts on the stuff coming and going.
Well, we have AP, and all those, they're all filed accordingly. It's the detail attached to like wire transfers. I was able to find other sources to get some of that stuff that had me kind of concerned, but
Everyone checked out that you.
right so far, yeah, so.
Yeah.
So, and so there's a couple things that I can't locate, and I'm sure if I pick up phone, call Matt, he probably can tell me some of this stuff, but I try to refrain.
Yes.
And then I'll have a list of things I can't find, and then I'll say, I'll say, John, is it time for me to call him?
Yeah.
Have a witness with you. Seriously.
Okay. Yeah, well, maybe John and I'll do it. Or maybe we don't have to, we just, yeah. So, one of the big things, was, improved communications over the finance and operational opportunities, and they really appreciated me going back and meeting with them a couple times and trying to figure out how would it make their job easier, what do you need to see, because everybody, I think most people are visual, they run something and say, I can look at this line and this line and I know where I'm at, it should be that easy. So if you want the 35 page, it has in red all the new lines I added to it, and then the breakout be more, give them better transparency to what they're doing and how.
Us sitting down, probably a workshop for an agenda item, and especially before that public hearing, of just kind of diving in real fast prior to that. Yeah.
But this is a, hey,
Yes.
a flag saying, hey, here's the opportunities that are coming up that need to be addressed. But I highly recommend you don't wait till June.
Yes.
I would say this is a January or February thing, and so, because, appropriations and budgeting and so on,
We're starting on that, yes.
right, well, as long as you're in aggregate, you're not over
Sure.
before you run the resolution and hold a public hearing,
Got you.
then you're in line with everything. But if you're over already,
Sure.
It could be a different standard.
Put the brakes on that real fast.
Yeah.
Prior to, yes, in February, yes,
So,
Maybe we can invite the budget committee to that too.
potentially, yes.
okay, so they were very happy. We were communicating with them, John and I, and they were very happy that I was helping them steer and give them detail and so on, but you know, I shouldn't be saying that, you know, I don't mean that. But they said that they haven't had the attention in the last couple of years that they would have appreciated in the development or in the monitoring of their budget.
Sure.
So, let's see here. Okay, yeah, needs to be able to easily identify key budget appropriations in their budget departments. Yeah, so like Mohammed's great time. Where's the beef? You know, where's those reserves? So, and this, as we go over some of the lines, you'll see what happened to the reserves. I'm gonna talk about it a little bit.
So when you were the financial director, a question for you is how often did you have a department head meet with you? Was it once a month? I mean, is that random or?
Oh, no, I, on a quarterly basis, I made sure the reports went out. I sat down with them saying, here's what I see, what you see, and so on. And I did that with each of the departments on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty standard thing, you know, so it doesn't get, you know,
Sure.
you only do so much damage in a quarter.
Yeah.
In a year, you lose it. So,
I just wanted to find out, yeah.
yeah, so, I hope I'm not talking out of line, John. I don't want to make it your job that much harder. Yeah, yeah, so, yeah, so, they were, you know, we already kind of covered most of these points, you know, the transparency, the uncomfortableness, confusion on information provided on the budget and so forth, so, and how they wanted they wanted to enhance some of the transparencies, especially, you know, you have Parks and Rec. And they're very fluid program, you know, you had to be flexible in your budget, you know, and you get a lot of grants. I mean, you know, Shauna already, you know, since the beginning of the budget period for over 3 months, she's got over $200,000 in grants, donations, and scholarships. I mean, not sponsorships, and that's for specific things. So being shut out of the enhancement, community enhancement fund, closing that all down was a disservice, you know, to them and to library. They have special donors and so on. So it helps keep the transparency. So I would recommend continuing that. Utilizing community enhancement for one-time revenues or revenues that will help start building a program, then you can move it over to the general fund once it's established. You know that here I have this stream and you know,
Yeah.
so
Because we did quite a few little areas like that. We're kind of consolidated to general fund, trying
right.
to budget and get the police station going was a big one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and of course, like I mentioned, capital improvement program budgets, they were they said one thing in one document, another thing in another, and the bottom line is it did capture everything that was, you know, was believed to be captured. So, and you'll see this in the budget, but it doesn't, it really impacts water and sewer, you'll see that. But the rest of them, it's just enhanced transparency, you know. They have one line is capital projects, and you're putting 5 different projects into it, you have 5 lines. One for each project, so. Enhanced flexibility of the budget, I already talked about that. And then now we go into. Now, you might find it easier to follow along by, you know, looking at this 5-page document that has all the outline, had little bullets on it and whatnot. I had originally had it in the presentation, and now I look at all the words, I'm going, oh, I don't know, man. I don't know which was better. So, but on well, it goes by fund here, or groups of funds. So in the general fund, you'll see basically the net zero impact. What you haven't seen, and it's in, exhibit D, is, you know, you haven't seen the change, the impact, to the funds, from beginning fund balance to ending fund balance of the audit. Well, it's not audited, it's unaudited fund balances. And they seem pretty accurate, so I still have some scrubbing to do there, to the beginning fund balance of this year. So, for example, well, here you had roughly, beginning fund balance that was greater than anticipated in the general fund. You know, an amount of $282,000. That means they didn't spend all the money that was reappropriated. Well, that reappropriation happened in June, or in May, I guess, I think, May, June. So that raised your expenditure levels, but they didn't spend it all, so it brought back 282,000. So roughly in the general fund. So that's good. So, and then you see the total cost of all the identified pieces that were either that were inadvertently left out or not properly codified in the budget, or just appeared, you know, because it became operational necessity and they realized, oh, it's not there. Totals about 307,000. So I could read over each of these points, but again, the unaudited but beginning fund balance kind of nets against the total increase in expenditures. What is positive on here is the ARPA grant. I don't know if it's positive, but the ARPA grant is supposed to be in 3 years, allocated over 3 years. Well, we got the second and third year this last August. So we basically doubled a lot of ARPA funds that we received that we didn't anticipate, so they weren't in the budget. But those are for specific programs and purposes, so they'll be reserved at the end of the year. When we close the budget, we'll measure, and you probably should get a report, and you measure the expenditures that were actually incurred, applied against the revenues, and how much is left over as carried forward that we have to utilize. And the important thing is you know, you're almost halfway through that whole program, and you know, you only have to December of 24 to make sure you spend all the money or it goes back. So, and one of the lines would be, for example, is we have 460,000, I think, for water, sewer, undergrounding over at the industrial park. And John and I talked to, might not reach that point yet. So, but we can move it over and cover the undergrounding, maybe on the downtown riverfront project park. Yeah, instead.
As long as it's related to that.
Right, it'd be, yeah, so, but John can probably.
Yeah, as long as it's a qualifying expense, and the way the council set that up was a menu of how we're gonna spend allocate the money, isn't you guys?
Yes. Yep.
Right, so we can move it over and make sure we utilize.
Yeah.
You know, so so you have 406,000 in more grant money, would have represented year 3 roughly. So, and then I moved the dockside services from in the budget. When you do the resolution and modification, probably won't show up because you already have it there. It's already been covered by the originating adopted resolution. So, and then on your expenditure side, it just goes down here. Police, you know, they had primarily the driver there is body cameras and a report writer, which was done through through the budget committee, but it didn't seem, I can't find it anywhere in the budget. It was, as far as I know, it didn't get codified into the budget when he came up with the final order.
Sure, I know what's presented to us, so as a council.
Right.
Yeah, but chief about monitoring and the safety of the
Right,
officers,
yeah.
protecting the citizens and the officers themselves.
Mhm. Right, and the body cameras is 28,000 for 5 years. And the report writer is 60,000 for 2 years, 180 total. And at this time, you know, there's could be other costs that need to be quantified for that report writer, but that will be addressed in a later report by police, you know, that go over all the other components and move around that, so. And then, library facilities maintenance fee, at the time when budget was developed, it was thinking that we would fund it in-house, so we would have an in-house person do the custodial services. But that didn't transpire, and so when all the budgets were closed and approved and so on,
COVID kind of started that too as well.
Mhm. Yeah,
Kind of, I mean, back then it was even had to, public bathrooms had to be cleaned in order for us to reopen.
mhm,
That's why, if you're wondering. that was
yeah.
Part of, I think, why we went with.
No, the library hasn't had a janitor at all.
No, they continue the contract services.
Like, wait a second.
They continue it. If they don't get an appropriate, they'll be over budget, or they have to cut back on their digital files or whatever, and.
Guys, we need a janitor. Please, and I'll sign up for that one.
Yeah, so, and then finance, 53,000 for the unanticipated turnover. You know, part of that is my contract costs, so that's a flow.
Yeah.
You asked for.
No, it's not all, it's not all. There's attorneys and then there's and a little bit of attorneys, and then there's a increase in the audit because we have to do a single audit as well. So it jumped up 17,000. It'd be on the individual report here. Oh, I don't have it broken out on this one. Okay, well, I do talk about it in the report, but so and then again, dockside services, the move from tourism is what we're proposing, and what the ordinance says the resolution says you should be doing, but anyhow, again, council can direct.
Sure.
Is whatever, you know, you feel is best, how, you know. Yeah, I just have a limited knowledge because I wasn't here that time, you know, period, and has evolved, so, you know. So I had to make some extrapolations and get to it, so.
Sure.
Yeah, and then technology, they have, they need to get a file server license and they got insurance from CIS or CSI. I always get that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm dyslexic, so.
And it went up, I'm sure.
Your numbers person.
Yes, I do great with numbers, but rarely do I transpose, but yeah, but anyhow. And then equipment, we made an appropriation for equipment because we moved, you know, in the budget, you're supposed to transfer out of technology fund, which is closing, it's all closed other than the transfer this year. But because the ending fund balance was higher, instead of 40 or 70 something, it's now 100 and it is $111,000.
$750.
Yeah, but I did make a transfer, I'm reducing the transfer by 30,000 on top of that. And that is reflected because that's the transfer that was expected for facilities when they closed the major facility fund.
Yep.
And to me, what I see is how they accumulate that reserve. It really should go over to Public Works since they are doing facilities.
Yes.
So you'll see that later in the report. Anyway, and I'm going way too long. So I'm gonna speak
No, that's fine, John. No, this is simply okay.
Question, since you just said that right there, that made me think about moving the dockside stuff to parks instead of tourism. Is that because the money generated from the docks would then go into the parks fund?
It would go in the general fund.
Okay.
And
What would be the purpose of moving it? I'm just.
because it was originally budgeted to be that, and it was changed at the last minute before the ordinance resolution was approved. You know, I don't know what facility, but it was in there because it's in your when I add up all the numbers in the resolution, that 18,000 sticks out this way and that way in tourism and in general fund, so.
I think it would
The
maybe,
initial intent was to leave it in the general fund in parks, and it was always there for years, as far as I can tell,
and I don't know if we were to, the discussion around that was maybe because of mainly it is kind of turning into tourism over there, as the island side of things.
right, and we could,
And that may have been why, we were moving that direction at the time. I'm sure there was a little bit of a discussion on it. I'm not positive, but like you said, we get a glazed look over our face when we're.
Yeah. well, you can always recommend that it goes into the community enhancement fund, because, except when it's a capital project.
Exactly.
When there's a gap, but it is, right now, it's, you got a pristine dockside there, and
But
it makes more.
They can be, the docks can be expensive and a lot of maintenance. too.
Right,
Yeah.
so,
Don't let short there.
yeah,
What would be the benefit of moving it to the community enhancement?
well, it would, you can have it dedicated to parks. And it's a net cash flow until you hit
That
that.
big to repair.
Right, and then you maybe make that, build that in later into your CIP and be paid out of capital that way,
Sure.
and set up a cap, so, again, it'll be a different funding source for that, so but anyway.
But originally, I mean, we weren't getting any revenue off.
No, I know, and that's.
So basically tourism was flipping the bill. Basically tourism. Wait, I see it, is that correct?
I didn't go back very far.
Oh, he said that it switched at the last minute, so I don't.
Right, it switched at last minute to go over to tourism, and that maybe, I listened to 2 out of the 3 hours of the one main budget discussions that you had, so.
Yeah, I just know there was a lot of discussion and that was part
Yeah.
of, some of the stuff that was going on was,
Right.
Right. With tourism too.
Yeah, I mean, we leave it there and codify it as a resolution,
And just keep that in mind, there was some issues with.
Yeah. I can look back.
Tourism revenue and
Right.
cities. What the city should and shouldn't get and.
Yeah.
So look at that pretty
Yeah.
honestly and fairly when you're diving in, please.
Yeah.
We'd all appreciate that because we all agreed on that too.
Mhm.
Yeah, not to stay too long on that single point,
Yeah.
but there's the acquisition of kiosks, and then there's on the expense side, and there's the revenue coming in. The revenue stream off the kiosk, where that goes, that pays for, it. And there's this harbor master agreement that need to be
Yes.
serviced too. So
Oh,
there's
that's
a
right.
Yes.
I forgot. You have to pay off what we paid for the kiosk and first and then.
And the harbor master too. Yeah.
Is there a debt service stream that I didn't see a debt service stream in there. That I was aware of.
Well, yeah, it was charged to tourism, that cost.
Oh,
For
okay,
the kiosk and stuff,
okay, all right, yeah,
we make that whole first and then,
so is there an interfund loan?
Officially in the weeds.
yeah, sorry. It's a question that one.
Yeah, no, but is there an interfund loan? Or was there supposed to be an interfund loan and? Okay, because I didn't see anything in, I'm going through all the notes and the debt service and so on, and that, I did see a blurb somewhere popped up. Just like I saw a blurb about the library reserve, so, and it made me nervous, but until I went through and. Yeah. It was out of content, the notes that were written in the budget and the presentation when I listened to the tape.
Sure.
So, yeah. So, and that's library still has their building reserve.
Yes.
Well, there was a touch and go there.
That was built for expansion over there. The way that was designed. Yes.
Oh, okay. So, we move along here, the tourism, I'm waiting, I need to get with Tina and we need to just kind of, I need to, and John, and pull in all the tools for analysis. I did some preliminary reviews, but it is, can't do it without opening up and peeking into Tina's box.
Gotta let the dust settle from Halloween Town first.
Yeah, we've done some preliminary stuff, but I'm still, we're still working on it. So. Right, Gina? Okay, so, community development, wow, we got 12 million more in the budget. And 11 million in expenditures. Well, what happened is now we have the full picture, pretty much the full picture of the total cost and the financing. So we're updating the appropriations accordingly. Now, this is a 2-year, but putting it in all 1 year. And it's a real important distinction because when we get to sewer, you see a 7 million drop in the fund balance.
Sure.
Or something like 5 million, I guess. 5 million, and that's easily explained, but it's just, yeah. So it's a 2-year, and then we get near the end of the year, do carry forward to continue it on the next year's budget, so that's.
Right, the level back out.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
So primarily of the 12 million increase, 11 million is the or 11, almost 12 million, yeah, is the funding for the project for downtown Riverfront. And we have other funding sources too. You'll see that here in the SDCs, portions of the projects that are defined as coverable under SDCs will be picked up here as well. So, but they'll be in the SDC funds.
And we also knew about this as far as increases in our sewer and storms
Mhm,
and water
right.
over the next 5 years. Cover some of these other that aren't covered by.
Right, and that's one of the 5-year projections forecasts that I'll be working on that I look forward to, because I really enjoy setting water and sewer rates. I don't enjoy raising them, but I enjoy doing the analysis. on that.
Good, glad you like it.
You're alone in that one.
Well, I've done it for, I've done it ever since I started working in government and primary and when I was in Salem, so,
Okay. Yeah, back to your roots.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get back. This community enhancement fund, we have revenue increases at 206,000 and that's mostly generated, it's the match, you put in the revenues and then you up your expenditures there. So it's funded by new revenue sources, the expenditures. So, and that's mostly parks. And mostly our recreation. So,
The hiring of all the grants and stuff too.
right, yeah, well, yeah, they get a lot from couples. Northwest District, the education district,
Oh, yeah,
yeah, they're quite a contributor to this,
good.
so. And then, let's see here, where am I now? Community enhancement, okay. Expenditures are increased 11 primary due to downtown river. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's a repeat. No, I'm sorry. I got carried away. I didn't delete that. No, that's good. That's stated up above. And yeah, so, and I just mentioned that we added a line for debt service in community development fund, which represents the Columbia Bank loan that was paid off in the refinancing in 2020. And so, yeah, this is one of the rabbit holes I went down, how are you paying this, I didn't look right, so I might have set up something new here, but and I'll be glad to go over with anybody. John saw my analysis, so it reduces the debt service requirements coming out of water, sewer. The streets were just right on and nothing was going for the veneer, so it was, you can figure the where it was being coming out of, so.
Sure.
So I'm still looking at it, but I don't see it coming, debt service payments coming out of anywhere but streets, water and sewer, so. And it's been, but, yeah, 2020, so it was June of 21 was the first debt payment. We had payments there. Let's see here, Then we jump into the street fund, revenue increased 331 because of an ODOT grant, and the expenditures increased because of, the project they would be doing for sidewalk. That, they done a section of it, now they're doing the next section, but the costs seem to be up, so that it may be delayed, but we went ahead and captured the revenue and the expenditures. In case they can start, something phenomenal happens and the bids come in and they go, okay, we can do it. So, but anyway, speak up, Mohammed, if you need to.
You're doing a great job.
Oh, okay.
Keep going, man.
Okay. And then the next slide is SDCs. There. Thanks. Yeah, so SDCs, it's a piece of cake. It just all in capital outlay. Broke it out, and you still have.
It can't change, it always has to stay solid, right? I mean, whatever you take in, SDC goes into that line.
Right, but you can have a contingency and you can have a reserve.
Sure.
But Max put it all into capital outlay, which, you don't ever have to really, it's all within between accounts, so you don't have to do anything to move things around. But for tracking purposes, to make their lives a little easier, how they're doing on multiple projects that might be hitting this at the same time, they have a separate line for each one.
Sure.
So that's what we did, we just moved things around pretty much. But I just want to make a note, out of SDC, 1.2 million of it is for the downtown river, right? For the undergrounding of water, that meets the definition capacity, and for the park.
Sure.
But all we do there is just make it more transparent. So, and on the enterprise fund. Yeah, you can just look at that little corner box there. And you see, any fund balance, the judge was adopted, it was 11.4, now it's 5.1. The bulk of it is sewer. What happened there is the ODOT loan, not ODOT, DEQ loan for pipeline timing of the basin fix project got moved out. It's not going to be done. Got pushed out. So we went ahead and reduced the 10 million that was coming in DEQ, but we didn't have matching total cost of the project. We only had 5 million. All of a sudden your fund drops 5 million. Because you didn't have it matched. So, if you had any, you want to correct that so you can visualize and see that as you go along, so you don't have that 5 million misstating, giving you a sense of security because you all have 7 million in there. So now you have 2 million and let me see here. I think your fund balance, well, we'll get to the fund balance in a little while. Oh, here it is. Yeah, well, 2 million in sewer. So that is a little kind of tight, but
it's because the basic fix project.
right. Well, we're not doing it this year, but we moved the
That's-
funds
yeah,
and the,
yes.
right, yeah. So that's why when we did the downtown riverfront project, we put all of it together.
Yeah.
So it matches, so you can feel, okay, we got everything covered, good. And then as things go along and things adjusted, then it's easy enough. You see the total and then you see where you're at. So, anyway. And then the storm fund, okay, in the water fund and in the street fund, you'll see an additional 25,000 taken out of each of those funds, and this leads to this next slide that we're coming up. And that is, we'll flip to the next slide now. And we'll talk about Public Works Operating Fund. What happened last year is you did a budget resolution, you did a supplemental budget. And there was roughly 400,000 in improved or increased appropriations out of the Public Works Operating Fund to cover different costs. I couldn't tell you what they all covered, but, and then what happened is it, all of a sudden, the fund balance of 500, now over 500,000 dropped to 196, I think it is, so, or no, 100. Yeah, well, it dropped.
96, yeah.
No, the 196 is the different thing. It's redirecting the major facilities resolution. So the 196 that. Yeah, so it was, the beginning fund balance was budgeted at 538. But when you measure, unaudited fund balance is only 197. So all of a sudden, they built their budget this year, assuming they were gonna have a balance of 538, and they would be drawing down on it. Well, if you don't do anything, it'll be a negative 31,000. And what is the result there is when you do a reappropriation, like at that magnitude in any fund, when you do that, you just catch it in the next year and up your revenue. In internal service funds, you can easily up your revenue sources and charge the other funds.
Sure.
So that's why we increased the public works service charges of 25,000 each of the funds, bringing in 100,000 to help balance this fund for this year. It would, either it would have been captured in the or resolution that you put in last year to amend the budget, or you capture it in the building of your budget for this year, but it fell between the cracks, and therefore that's why you need to do the supplement.
Sure.
So that, but then that's also offset because we went ahead. Major facility fund had, 38,000 to be transferred to the general fund. I know I just told you it was 30,000 received by the general fund. That's one of the, yeah, I can't explain where the other 8,000 is.
Sure.
Yeah, so anyway, but that transfer, to me, it was a collection of revenue over time period to build that fund. To me, it should go to whoever's maintaining the facilities. Well, that's Mohammed's charge for city facilities. So, and that's one of the arguments, where's my reserves? Show me the reserves. So, this is one of those reserves. The other one was IT reserves. So, it's just important that they're not as big as you hope they would be, but, so these reserves, from my analysis, could go to public works operating, not to the general fund. So what I'm doing is saying, I'm telling you that or I'm just saying, I'm not doing anything other than.
Well, you're recommending.
Yeah, I'm recommending
Yes.
that we follow the intent of the reserves and not the budget transfer.
Sure.
So that we built in the budget. So
Yes.
I know it's not fun reducing your revenues in the general fund. But anyway.
Well, I don't think any of us realized how much we were scraping the size of the barrel trying to make a dream happen.
Mhm.
Okay, that's what I
Right.
would speak in general. When we all have that same dream, we want to get there, but
Oh, yeah.
we didn't. We're kind of not misled just a little bit, I think,
Mhm.
personally.
Right, well, listening to, I haven't gotten all the way through the budget for this year, but I listened to last year's budget. Because I needed to find out what happened to the, major funds, the reserves and so on, so. And I don't think he articulated transfers. So and as far as I can tell, he didn't have a slide talking about transfers, because that's an important
Yes.
component. So,
Yep.
so,
I'm just grabbing a cup of coffee,
Yeah.
I'm listening.
okay. So we're almost done here. So much for the 25 minutes I'm happy. The technology fund had a $42,000 greater when we look at the unaudited fund balance, and looks like it'll stay. I don't think it will change. So that, I recommend we up the transfer to the general fund to 111. So that would be reflected in all these budget adjustments that we recommend. And then I recovered the public works operating fund, and of course, with those reserves being moved over, we should appropriate some of it to cover the intent of facilities. So we increased a small amount, 21,000 to cover that, and then 70,000 we would recommend for a piece of equipment that the public works needs. So now this might be circumventing your lease part.
For you on the public works operating fund.
Sure.
That was something I've questioned the entire time is. We have slowly, over the last about 4 years, been looking at public works and we're trying to, I don't know. Change the budget quite a bit, but I don't think we know the depth of that. Where it was like 5 years ago compared to today. And just looking at positions, even 4 or 5 years ago and where we are at today, just to see where we're at position wise compared to. So I'd love to sit down with you at some point in time, especially before February, and we all are to understand how budgeting works. And discuss that.
Okay,
Okay?
yeah,
So I definitely like to meet with you on that.
okay.
We have an update on the positions. We talked a lot about this actually, and we found 5 existing ones in public works.
That are still there?
Yes.
Yes, they're vacant, and they're budgeted for, and, so they're in the complement count for the budget, and it equals the budget in the document. But, and later you'll see one of the conclusions. I think I jump into. So.
Interesting, okay. I think you had mentioned that. Mohan.
Yeah. Okay, then what do we still need to address? I have to tell you what I didn't touch. I'd be remiss. Currently, we didn't identify any adjustments required in administration, city council, municipal court, building, planning, general fund, general services. But that, on the general fund, general services, that may change based on how, how facilities, this new department in public works, how that is supposed to integrate with the city and the sourcing, because there's many different ways you can do it. So that's the conversation before you figure out whether you need more money in general services in general fund or not.
Well, I think but I think it's very important to have that department in our public works because to hire out for those little projects is.
Oh, yeah.
Basically responsible at all for taxpayer purposes.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So I agree. That's why I recruited Roger. I take a bow. On Roger's hard work. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you, recruiting him. Yeah, because he is definitely a gem.
Yes, yeah, so. Roger's listening. Okay, there's additional analysis in the community enhancement, to fully assess reserves. Community enhancement is, you get revenues, you match it to expenditures, it's gone, so you have, and it's not going, you keep it as a segregated reserve in your fund balance. And it should be, when I was here, it showed it in the CAFR as well, our annual report, showing what's restricted. And this fund, for all intent and purposes, was closing this year. It was, other than there was appropriation authority to zero out for the library to spend all their building reserves. I don't know what they're gonna do, but so anyway, which is fine. You probably just, doing the regular, cover everything, make sure everybody has enough money for projects, something goes awry, so you just, not unusual practice, but, but we do have a couple, subgroupings that I need to go back more than just last year to find out how it transpired, but you have like 200,000 in 2 of the reserves or something like that. 2 of the reserves, that's negative, and all the other reserves like building, the technology reserve is, 84,000, I think, something like that.
Yeah, I
But-
think you're right.
So, and you have a reserve in the library and you have a reserve in Parks and Recreation because they got a really big grant last year. You know, and they didn't spend it all, so, you know, so they should have a reserve there, so those reserves kind of block or match up, so you don't see the negative reserve in that fund. So that needs further analysis, so, you know, I'll figure out. You know, but that, I have to go back a couple of years, so, and,
So on that Parks and Rec grant, it reflects on operations of the rec part of things, even though it went into the Parks Department, correct? And only for, staff?
oh, you're talking ARPA, this is something different.
Okay.
This is another grant they got last year, that was like 350 or something like that, it was.
Oh,
They got, yeah, and this year they got, you know, 200, you know, I mean, and that's just the first quarter, so.
well, I think we can make sure that we also don't get muddled in the water as far as Parks and Rec.
Mhm.
What, Operation Parks itself requires, because
Right.
they're budgeted together now.
No, they're in separate departments, divisions, they're in separate divisions, they have a 708 is parks and 709 is recreation, so.
Grants can't be used for reserves. They need to be used for whatever you apply for the grant for, right?
Right, absolutely, that's why they're in.
Say it's a reserve because it's specifically for something. I mean, it
Right.
has to be used.
Yeah, they gave the money, said, you're gonna run this program, right? Yes,
Yeah.
okay, here you go. And we're obligated to run that program.
Exactly, that's.
You know, so while, you know, and usually, you know. And this is not unusual, it's what I've experienced all my career in recreation is the fungibility or quickness and flexibility of funding sources for programs, you know, you don't know what you're gonna program until you get, oh, I'm interested in providing, you know, and you get a foundation grant or whatever, and you fund it. So, but, you know, it's a fine tuning and what really should be happening, you know, not to say it's not or not, you know, I don't know what goes on. But what usually happens is they get the interest, they go to council with a report, so council can continue to be the authority on the budget appropriations, because, you know, if you get a grant and you start doing expenditures and you code those expenditures to the grant revenue, well, first of all, it's against budget law. And second of all, well, first of all, really, it's usurping your appropriation authority. Council is the sole custody of the, you know, budget and the appropriation authority, so. So anyway, so it's kind of a fine line, so it's more of a communication and fluid kind of thing, so. But anyway,
On these grants, and I know in the federal grants I've had to work with, there's an overhead. Kind of not for the actual program to keep the rest of the institution operational. And these grants, do they have an overhead line in them?
I haven't looked at any of the documents, you know, on those grants. So, so I couldn't tell you, but, they're small, you know, they're from the education district or they're from, I can't remember where I'm drawing a blank. If I brought more detail with me, I could flip it, because I have them lined out.
My main experiences with the NIH and places like that.
Yeah, that's.
And,
Yeah, federal grants, yes, they definitely have, they definitely have a component. Most small cities do not exercise that because of well, first of all, the documentation of pay, all right? If it's small and you can recover some of your personnel direct costs, you know, which Shauna has told me that they tend to recover some wages and salaries from these things, all right? Direct wages and salaries very easy, but an overhead rate, you have to have an indirect cost that's approved by the housing authority, which is, you know, which I think is the surrogate in the state here is the Department of Highway. Those approvals of indirect cost rates and
happy, doesn't it?
what?
That makes you happy, doesn't it?
Well, you know, in fact, one of my employees, when I was in Salem, she became working over there. And then she called up and said, you know what, we need to review your indirect rates. And I had it was too complex, you know, but I had one that was the highest in the state because we did it a different way than you have two ways to do that, but anyhow, that's another story, but. But she went through them all and blessed it and then it wasn't really probably serviceable by the next finance person. So with that, yeah, so most cities do not apply. They apply totally to the projects and not take the overhead. I work, you know, like the city of Toddy, city of Half Moon Bay, Salem does though. Salem does because it's a lot of work to develop and maintain those you know, the indirect cost rates.
So I think it's funny that you brought up two different ways of doing that, because there's multiple ways to do your math. You know, this comprehensive math that they're teaching at school nowadays is just like, what the heck is this? I don't know if I mean, it's just odd, so.
Yeah, I helped my granddaughter when I was in Florida do her math. And they had this new math and it was like. Kind of backwards.
It's all so much simpler, yes, I know, because it's all drawn out and it's just.
It wasn't simple.
It was. I agree. Sorry, Patrick.
We're teaching how to tell time right now, so on a digital, on an analog.
Okay, so with that said, that's the biggest skeleton in the closet right now. So is that those balances, but we'll come to a successful resolution shortly. So, and then tourism, we just need to go, we know we need some supplemental appropriations, but we gotta finish going through the data. That, and Tina has a lot of it. So, very comprehensive. And then the police facility fund, no current analysis. You just got a lot of money sitting there and you have you have some, well, John can tell you, you have about 400,000 expenditures so far, and it's just, you know, doing all the different things they're supposed to do, you know, to get to the foundation of building a facility.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so and looking at the debt service, they did build in the debt service, a couple of years of interest only, knowing that you're not gonna spend the money right away, you know, so the financial institution that was issuing that, you know, it appears, looking at the documents, it anticipated capitalized interest.
Good.
So.
Yeah, so we'll have no huge, I mean, you're paying worth it, but they did a little knowing that the first 3 years is.
Yeah, but which is because when I was Salem, we were financing, you know, $300,000 to $500,000 in CIPs. And we would do commercial paper, you know, the cheap interest, and then flip it within 6 to 9 months over to debt. And we already spent it, so you don't, when you borrow it, it's more expensive, but if you hold it, it gets a lot more expensive.
Sure. Yeah.
It's most expensive money that you can have, so. Anyway.
Yeah. So basically, we have a couple year window to really.
Well, I think next year, the capitalized interest thing looks like it's,
So we need to get it going on, realizing what we're gonna do there.
yeah, so. So I don't know if that helps you, John. I didn't tell you that I was flipping through it and reading and doing the whole debt service thing and going down that rabbit hole that it you know, it doesn't directly. Well, I haven't found the exact paragraph. It should be one in there on that, but the way they structured the debt service payments.
No, I was well aware that they capitalize some of the interest.
Yeah, okay, I didn't know either. Okay. So, well, now I am too, and now the council does. So anyway, I'm sorry. Rambling, okay. I just call it age.
Well, you were similar style 7 years ago too. Oh, I say that all the time.
Okay, well, at least you're not glassed over this time. Okay, all right, and then, the revenue analysis, I did a cursory review, I looked at the major sources to see where they are. Your sewer revenues are a little lower than they should be, but it's because of the tardiness of finally implementing the unit.
The increase.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, so when I do that forecast, I'll be able to get it.
Hit that mark, yeah.
And then, of course, update all the 5-year forecasts to assess the CIP, staffing levels after ARPA, funding of public safety facilities. The list goes on.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so this slide shows you where are you at the end of the budget cycle, June 30th of 23. And it's gonna change, but right now, based on the review, your general fund will have 530,000 more in ending fund balance. Your special revenues will have a little over 2 million, assuming you spend all your construction. You do it all 1 year instead of 2 years, but I don't, it's gonna be more than that, but it happens. Your system development funds in aggregate will be 194,000 higher. The enterprise funds are gonna be down 5.8 net. Well, one thing is on the water fund, talked about that 600,000 settlement. Well, it hit June, so it's in the June unaudited fund balance. But the revenues for water sales for that year, you didn't have any increase, so the activity didn't increase, as much as you anticipated. So that 600,000 kind of balanced it all out.
Okay.
So I think it did increase your ending fund balance, but well, we can look here. Beginning fund balance, ending fund balance, water, enterprise, water. No, it goes down because I took the 600,000 out, but when you look at the okay, I have another slide that shows, compares the two, June 30, 23, June 30, 22, yeah, so. Where's my beginning fund? Okay, your fund balances. So if you go down to water, you look at fund balance, bear with me, yeah, so. Your fund balance was still higher, but you had a lot of capital projects that got deferred, so you can't really measure that, the water sales and so on, so. Okay, I have another, I think if you look in an exhibit, you can see more closely. There's one that just compares adopted budget to, the beginning ending budget last year and the ending balances last year, the beginning balances this year. So anyway, internal service funds will be up by 91,000. And that's because we're moving to major facilities. We're not moving it out of the internal service grouping to the general fund, leaving it. Right now, we recommend we leave it in the internal service grouping. So the conclusions of now quarterly reviews with departments, enhanced training for departments on the Tyler Encode financial programs reports. And I found I learned a lot about reports there. It took me forever, but I only and how to modify it so they can have template reports, and they just press a button instead of checking a lot of boxes and so on. So that's one of my goals is to work with, have Jennifer help me, and we go out and get the department set up with the extended guides reporting. There's some really nice reports that give more than enough information from them to make informed decisions on their expenditures. So. And then increase department participation in development of budget for transparency. Let them tell you what budget lines they need to best track, so they're not confused. I don't care if I get confused. I get confused anyhow.
Yeah.
But if they're confused, then I'm really in a world of hurt. So. anyway, that would be my recommendation there. And then what's next? And again, we already kind of talked about that, you know, January, February, try to get supplement. So they have a public hearing and do the whole. Full monty in the supplement. I haven't measured everything, but you know, looking at the magnitude of all the changes and so on, you know, especially with capital programming and then the transfers between funds, and I think a public hearing. The resolution is best than, there's other limits that you could get just through the resolution period, you don't need to do a public hearing.
Well, I think we should definitely invite the and also maybe just a lot of time. Luckily, you're contracted, so.
Yes, I am, and you won't have to pay me for a good part of December because I'll be in Europe. So.
So what I've seen here though is everything that we're sitting okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say you're right in there. It's a little, I would be concerned about only having 2.5 million in the different water storms.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you where that concerns would be once they finish the 5-year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
I think we're kind of aware a little bit of that with, like I said, with the
Yeah.
increase of funding that we
Mhm.
know, because we met with Steve Donovan and just, you know, moving forward, and I think we've budgeted some projects in already.
Yeah, when I left here, though, you were scheduled slated for several years of increases that didn't, yeah, I don't think they, yeah, they didn't happen. And then, of course, then when you got to doing it again, then COVID set in.
I know, and then it was like, yes.
Yeah, you can,
Trying to stagnate for about a year, good year with a minimal increase, just enough to keep it out of the red. Yes, I mean, just.
Yeah, but you still do have one debt that talks about debt ratios. The rest is all full faith of general fund. And so that's the DEQ that had no interest,
Yeah,
you know, which is a nice deal.
yeah,
You know, it's cheap money if you don't pay interest.
sure.
But they have a caveat in there, talks about, I have to reread their document, but so that may have. It may
Something
be,
to
have some concern when you measure your ratios in the out years, in the 5-year. So
Okay.
to give you a heads up,
Sure.
I don't know what that may be.
Let us know if,
Yeah.
yeah, after your vacation.
Yeah, I gotta get audit, all the papers work for audit after them before Thanksgiving, that's my goal, so next,
Nice.
that, so.
All right.
Yeah.
Traded in a gloss for the semi-gloss. Thank you.
All right, John, thank you very much.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Kathy.
Sorry. Yeah, shit's on Kathy. Okay. All right. Gonna go on to our next item on our agenda, is a tourism activity. Peanut.
You're the next one.
So you're in sleep.
We'll give everybody a sec here.
We can.
Okay, we'll go ahead and let Tina start her report.
All right, well, I put together a packet so that people that are incoming can kind of have a little bit of history on how we get started with the program that we're doing right now. So I don't need to really belabor that. I'm just putting that in there. So if people want to read something, they at least have a little bit of information about how we get started. And we want to skip to, the meat and potatoes of what's going on. I would say we would jump to the new additions in 2022 page, with Curtis at the top. And that we are actively engaged with 13 Nights on the River, and this year, we probably had unprecedented numbers attending, and we had unprecedented vendors involved, and it just seemed to be a celebration of actually getting out and not worrying about COVID, maybe. That's part of why people were so enthusiastic. I want to say it's because we have great musicians, but there's all kinds of things that fit into that. We also had the beginning of a professional kite person that really engaged with 13 Nights on the River, and it culminated with the Grand Island Fan Castle competition. It's the first week of August. Of course, Halloween follows 13 Nights pretty quickly, and now we're getting ready for the Christmas shifts, December the 10th. So we are engaging more, I think, with the community in more events than probably almost any other city that is of this size, certainly, and larger in the state of Oregon. The retail reports from tourism efforts and bringing people to town. We had people that, broke way past their goals for the year. We had people saying, that they made in the time of Halloween equal to 6 months of income for their businesses. And some of that, I believe, is due to, of course, for the last 2 years, we've still really been under COVID. And then this is the first year we didn't have to limit people from coming again. And we have really solid sponsors that have been with us for probably 4 years or more at this point in time. And 13 Nights on the River also has sponsors just for that specific event. Some of the events have specific sponsors, but the major sponsors have remained constant. The Halloween hunt this year brought over 1,500 people directly into retail locations uptown that were open on Saturdays and Sundays. This allowed us to spread out our guests, which is a huge concern here because of the vast numbers of people that we did. We had a new decorated home tour, which was Nightmare on 4th Street.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I noticed
And,
that.
yeah.
Topaz's place and went on.
Yeah.
That was pretty.
And that was from efforts of, like the whole street, actually.
I know.
We had a meeting on Sunday in the afternoon just to kind of thank them for all participating. And they were all excited about, what are we gonna do next year? We want to do this more. And so I just see that turning into something that is gonna be really cool. Other people have, it said they're interested in having their streets do something similar. So we'll see where that goes. But right now, Nightmare on 4th Street was, I think, really successful. And it took a huge commitment of time and energy from people on that street. I think there needs to be a special appreciation for making a 7-week commitment to do this for 7 weeks with no days off on the weekend. I mean, that is huge. So they're dedicated, and that takes a huge commitment. And then in the Alien Museum also was rocking and rolling for Halloween, and we had another place where people could go and be out of the plaza and entertained by a new attraction. Then we're encouraging anybody that wants to do standalone events. I know Shoestring Players did an event that we helped promote on the schedule. anybody that wants to get promoted basically just needs to let us know, and we of course add them to it. The, one of the highlights, this year, I think, is due to our vendors, and I'm going to just like have Stephanie take that piece over because she has another place to go.
Oh.
But she also is in charge of the vendors for, so.
Okay. So this year we had 32 vendors on contract. And of those, let's see, only 2 of those were new, Spirit of Halloween Town, which says we have 12 food vendors, both prepackaged and on-site preparation, and 20 non-food vendors. 30 of my vendors have been with us for multiple seasons. We're looking at, from 3 to 5 years. And 3 of the vendors doubled their spaces for last year's season. They all, as a little side note, everybody said that they had made over their goals. We did have issues of people running out of food, but luckily it was like after we were closing, so it was a pretty good problem to have. Let's see, so at the end of the 22 season, I handed out the 2023 contracts. Of our 32 vendors, 28 immediately confirmed they wish to return. Of those 28, 17 returned their contracts by the last day of the festival with a deposit payment. And of those deposits, 2 were automatically paid in full. Just wrote us a check for the whole thing for next year. 2 vendors, again, have also asked for additional space. We'd like to pick up other vendors in the food category, and we're exploring the options on that with an eye to what space will be available with development and so forth. And yeah, we're just gonna kind of keep an eye and go with what we can. That's about it.
Did you have a beginning and end meeting with vendors this year? Kind of talk about that a little bit. A while ago.
We had one for more the open to the public. The vendors actually, a lot of them are out of the area, or they were vending, like I had people that were flying in from Tucson and stuff like that. They live in the area, but that's where they were vending. So what I would do is they have my phone number, we talk, and then I would send out detailed emails like that. And then usually after the email, I get 5 or 6 calls. Yeah.
Yeah, they readily email us if they have any comments. It's really cool that they just feel like, oh, don't forget, yeah, I'm doing Halloween, but then I also want to do 13 nights. So we're because we do so many events with 4th of July, 13 nights, Halloween Town, Sandcastle even. We're engaged with this vendor community probably more than even I certainly am as a professional event producer with my own events. Engaging one time a year with vendors. We're engaging with them probably 10 to 15 times during a season, just because we're talking about contracts, where they're going to be located, what their power needs are, what their, electricity and water, and who their neighbor's going to be, what time they need to move in, if they have a food cart now versus a truck versus everything else. So
I know Stephanie said at the meeting that we went through that, she had a new email, so that's like a good way to track that, but trying to make sure that, and
well, it's not,
you guys, we talked about that, and that was a big
yeah.
curiosity, I'll say that word at the meeting, so
Yeah, I must have
make sure to stay communicating with everybody.
I must have been stopped about 5 or 6 times a weekend, like, do we know anything more now? I just did want to mention one of my vendors, Finally Done. This is our 2nd year being at Halloween Town. We absolutely love it. We have such a great experience both years. The first year we did Halloween Town, we had customers contacting Stephanie to get our information so they could find us and order from us. This year we had so many people stop by our booth saying they were specifically looking for us because they purchased the year before and wanted to purchase again. That is music to my ears. This establishes, all through the years, this kind of camaraderie. And she also does go in to say that by the end of 7 weeks, you have a family. It isn't just vendors, they all know each other. They're all, trading stories. But what was interesting is, she said that sometimes people would say to her, well, what's it like? You know, Halloween Town, you know, what's it like vending? And she said it's like Disneyland for those who love Halloween, which I thought was a really nice thing. So, anyway, that kind of.
So, I just know, sitting on the, parks, with, Mayor Reed. Who else was part of that? Was Council Content, were you on that? The boardwalk landscape architect? Maybe, I think it was Council Content.
I attend some meetings, but
Who was on the civil side? Anyhow, with that, working with Dan Carey and Mayor Reed and all that, the discussion was also about power in the parks, knowing that we have events and making sure that it's sufficient as we move forward. So,
They mean during construction, everybody's concerned about how are we gonna
Yeah.
Halloween Town during construction, you know?
well, no.
Oh.
Actually, at the completion of construction,
Well-
where are gonna be the PowerPoints, knowing that we could potentially have a big venue here and that we're not gonna have an issue with. Because it matters on size, like pipe sizing for water. Same with electricity, is that it's beefed up enough that it can deliver for a major event.
We have a vendor area, right? That's what I remember.
The Festival Street down.
Yeah.
That's on the street side, but also out here, making sure that, knowing that the new amphitheater is going in and stuff like that, that we have sufficient power.
At one time, I looked at having pads with all these facilities. So vendor could drive up and everything was right there. I mean, it gets to be extensive type of thinking that you need when you start working with more than one vendor. You got power, you got water, you gotta get rid of waste. You know, it's over there, how do you get?
The one you that sat in on that, correct?
A little more complicated than putting spiders on the street.
All right,
So the highlights for our year, I just wanted to outline, in my opinion, has been that we had an exceptional 13-night summer. We had incredible 4th of July. We had an exceptional Spirit of Halloween Town. We were in the bubble of magic weather. The Christmas ships event upgrades that we're doing. The updated museum offerings, the new train, summer activities increased the Sand Island and kites. We created new opportunities for volunteers. We had more community and volunteerism this year than we've ever had before. That is going to continue to increase because we're continuing to increase offerings. We had new sponsors and partners in Cascades, Sunmade and others. We updated the haunted house technology and offerings there. We updated, our entertainment was enhanced this year with more live acts than ever before, more celebrities. We purchased new barricades, signage, traffic control that was necessary. We have some riverfront additions and slight renovations down there, thanks to Public Works lending a hand. We effectively, I think, worked for parking solutions this year. We really didn't have issues with the vendors parking versus visitors from out of town parking. Although I think we should pay attention to that because that's going to be probably a concern in the future. We had no problems really with restrooms or garbage at all. We actually had cameras on the bathroom so that we could see if there was any lines, and the most line we ever had was 12 people during our event. During the parade that we took on their their congestion, but other than that, I think that we had adequate bathrooms and garbage solutions. We streamlined our vendors. We have a great person leading the kite club. We increased the curb appeal at the end of First Street and on First with the help of Public Works. We're looking at potentially going green as a garbage initiative during events. Because we have some vendors that just generate so much garbage that needs to be consolidated. We had 52 50-gallon garbage cans that we were managing every weekend. We developed both new businesses and community with new retail places, and even some business buildings came here because of Halloween Town and are currently being built, which add to, you know, obviously permits and taxes and everything else. We have video surveillance now that is continuing to grow because I think there's a need for it when we have things that occur. We want to try to identify how that happened. We have, of course, the new train. We have a new passenger boat, which I just got very pretty pictures of. And we have a new penny press. We have a new vending machine. We have a Boland's yard tractor. We have significant power and lighting and upgrades in the plaza and on the city hall building. We have generators for activities on Sand Island. We have hot water showers for Sand Island that run on propane. We have just a lot of power cables and Christmas lights and Christmas props and multiple new props and customized bowling trailers too. Those are just the highlights. We have a lot of little stuff that we're not gonna, you know, put on a piece of paper, but we have a really active year, sure. And as far as marketing goes, we have staggering numbers really for the size of this city from around the world. We're recognized now across the globe. The overflow from Gold Oak Hotels has really increased the Airbnb and Vacasa and short-term rentals in town that are available. Tourism brings about 70,000 plus people a year into St. Helens. Our social media platforms owned by tourism are playing, you know, center field and getting recognition from a lot of different outlets. And this year, Sun-Made Raisins joined us for an international advertising campaign, which procured, you know, extraordinary exposure. They were super happy. They surpassed over 1 billion mark for earned impressions, which if you go to that number, 1 billion, that is equivalent to $10 to $15 million in paid advertising, which is awesome for us. And that continues to, you know, that was just at the time this email was sent to me, which the campaign wasn't even over. And the client was super happy with that. We still have a big amount of traffic on discovercolumbiacounty.com. We are sharing things that people send to us and submit to us on that site. And we have, you know, bigger plans to increase that reach in 2023. We also have a documentary film crew that's been here that is doing a documentary on Spirit of Halloween Town, how it's come to be recognized, and haunted places. And Crystal's going to give a detailed report following me on the promotion side because it's like huge. And then I just want to say, you know, especially thank you to the staff for working during this time frame when it's really stressful. There's so many people in town. Public Works is awesome. Stephanie does a great job. All the volunteers that kind of make it happen, the CERT people, the Kiwanis, the Elks, the Lions, the Rotary. I mean, I think almost every nonprofit is involved somehow, either benefiting or having a volunteer that's coming to help them raise money for their different offerings that they want to do for their community. And then those are really the people that make it happen. So, you know, without them, none of this happens. I'll just tell you, because the scope of this is huge at this point in time. It would be different if it was one weekend, but this is 7 weekends. And it means that people have to give extraordinary commitments. So that should not be taken lightly when people look at, you know, what's going on here. It's huge. Does anyone have any questions about any of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
you wanna go over it or? do you
Yeah,
want me to
sure.
Ask my questions. Okay, what, I mean, I don't understand the last two. Statements on there. On the end of the page, that's what we're at, right?
This
Oh, that's.
Is
Is that what page
is
we're
thank
going
you.
over?
Yeah, yeah.
Not the thank you, the next page.
Okay, so the next page. And then with everything that's great, there's stuff that we have to address and try to figure out how to deal with it. And I think that, you know, that's about policy, that's not about what I determine or say, but. When I'm the contractor and I'm hiring people. And then I am put into a position of having a hostile work environment. I can't do that. So you guys have to write policy or you have to make decisions. Because it's, no one wants to put someone in a situation like that. Where they are being bullied and harassed. And I know that you have a huge, you know, statement that you have read to the public that you're against that. So when that happens, you know, there has to be some kind of a response, because otherwise I'm putting that person right back into a hostile work environment and they won't go. Like I have people say, I don't want to work that area anymore. I don't want to do that. And then that puts us in this silly, really, it's a silly place to find ourselves during an event where there's all this other stuff going on. And then you have people that go, well, I really don't want to work there because this happened and I don't want to go back. And so I mean, that's something that you as a council would have to make maybe some policies.
And I agree, there are policies, but I think we're talking about this, that those policies include that there needs to be a there need to be substantiated. If there are claims that there's a proper type of investigation and substantiation of any such.
Yeah.
Accusations,
I
so.
completely agree. And
Right.
thankfully John Walsh was there. So if he's the person that you get to substantiate stuff,
I guess would be, yeah, so,
yeah.
but there needs to be substantiation.
My question is, you know, when these
Process.
things are happening, I don't necessarily know if we need like a rule, like. But are you feeling supported by John about like getting these things solved? Because, you know, love you, John, you're the boss, so.
Is he?
They come
Is
to
he?
you. I mean, he
Yes.
is, he's the city administrator. He looks over your department specifically, so I feel like that should be a support for you.
Well, when someone is on a commission though, that is appointed and approved by the council.
So
right?
Commissioner,
John gets thrown in areas sometimes over either our counselors who are aware of things, and then he is in the middle of between two different situations, which is not fair. It needs to be a policy in place is what they're trying to say. I have not even had any discussion with anybody on this, but I understand where it clearly could be an issue because I've seen it already happen where there's been one or two of us out here in the weeds and there was a situation not knowing that, oh, because three sides to a story, his side, her side, and there's the truth. Well, it doesn't even have to be his or her,
Yeah,
but there's always the truth in the middle.
Yeah.
So whatever side you're hearing from, you know, and as long as, again, if there needs to be an investigation, sure, but we need to have some type of policy in place that we can go off.
Well, I think we do have, we do have policy in place.
Well, I think there could be even further a little bit. Well, we'll discuss it.
Yeah, I would like to,
I think-
yeah.
I mean, I'm just bringing it up now because there's plenty of time for you guys to discuss this and figure out, you know, what might be a course of action. Because it's beyond mine. I mean, I'm just saying that you're putting me in a really
Sure.
bad situation.
But
I'm
over,
glad you explained it that way because I didn't, you know, I wasn't quite understanding. You had people telling you they went and worked for positions and I
Yeah.
can understand where that puts you, you know, so thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that.
so, overall, though, very successful.
Yeah, it
I
was
see it was a constant,
Yeah.
steady flow even throughout the week. I mean, we're sitting.
It
in
totally
council
was.
meetings
Yeah.
And, that was full
Right.
out there.
And then the other piece of this that I would like to talk about is, you know, charges against people that commit crimes and damage property. We have pictures of this taking place, kids actively just destroying property. And it costs, you know, $1,500 to get it fixed. They're the same kids that are here for 13 nights that don't obey any rules and think that, you know, it's a game. But in fact, it's costing us some serious cash. So, you know, is there any point in time where, and I have photographs, so it's, you know, like I know exactly who these kids are. And it's not about throwing these, you know, kids into like a bad place, but it's like if there's no consequences, it escalates is what we're seeing.
You made reports. Well,
And I did call the police. And he said he was gonna come and take a report, and then he never did, cause it's like, why? So there's definitely, it's like when the mayor was at 13 nights and we have an ATV drive into the area, into the middle of an event. We call the police, nothing happens.
Yeah, that was, I will state there was an actual side by side that pulled down into the grass. And our cops came up and nothing did happen. You're
Yeah.
right, yes.
So it's like, I'm not gonna be the police. I'm just saying that if you wanna change policies so that things don't get damaged and torn apart.
Explain this to be clear, that the stage sits right here and the park's this big, right? The stage sits right here. The ATV was just on that riverside of the sidewalk. Parked. It wasn't around here.
No,
It was actually
through the crowd.
in the park. I need to make clear that
Was crazy.
really was.
People were like, what is going on?
Rule that says no ATVs in the park.
Like driving into the plaza, in the plaza. Oh, it's not-
Golf carts all over the
and
place.
it's not, well, it's not the vehicles, it's people who walk their dogs unleashed on sidewalks. Downtown and in the plaza.
Well,
We have a leash law.
Yes.
And we do have, but we have people who walk their dog on leashes.
I would agree with you, but a little more egregious than your dog being off leash.
Well, when you get a
Large.
If I was to take a 4x4 through your park, if I was to take a 4x4 through your park or an unleashed dog, which would you prefer?
well, I'm not, yeah.
Almost been run over in the for cyclists.
Then when people aren't being trespassed, if they
Well,
are.
and not like it's got.
You discuss.
It's got, we're hoping it gets all. I watched it too. Our officers did show up and then Tina did a follow-up. And they said, well. It was pretty much that, right?
Yeah, but all I'm saying is that
So
policies, right? It's like
overall successful,
policy.
no major events.
Oh, and it was very successful.
And I think that, if you could also help out, we are working, your Heather Epperly and her parade. You
Yes,
can help out with that portion of that day, knowing that we're gonna have a big flux,
yeah.
that would be greatly appreciated of this council.
I already met with her last week.
Good.
And there's policies in place that are, you know, appropriate for what happened.
Yes.
And there was some extenuating circumstances. She had already had a meeting with CERT and police before your council meeting, and they had resolved some things. And then we further defined some areas where we can be helpful and act as assistants to her. And because there's 3 people, you know, how much can they do when they don't do this for a living and they're doing their jobs and they're doing so much work to make this happen, and we want to support that. So it's more about, you know, the things that went a little bit sideways will never probably happen again. So that part is like, you can't really stare and compare too much, because one thing changed everything and that one thing is not gonna happen again. So one of the, you know, when we met, it was a really good meeting. They're super excited about next year, and it's just about having some more operational tools for them to make it work. We're already planning that, so it should be awesome. And then I also wanted to address the fact that, you know, tourism pays for things like porta potties and things like that, which, you know, the parks use our porta potties all the time for free. Typically, they would be paying $150 or $200 every time they use them. So collectively, since we bought the porta potties like 4 or 5 years ago, Parks has been using those porta potties every time they need to have them for a work party or anything else. So it's like, they probably don't know that we're contributing money in those kinds of ways by them not spending money that they typically would. The other thing is that we took videos of the trail before and after so that we can stare and compare and see if we did any damage or anything like that. So that if we do, we can fix it. So we didn't see anything on the camera that was different. I know we had that huge rainstorm and that definitely, you know, probably drug gravel into places that typically wasn't, but you know, you guys are gonna deal with whatever needs to happen with Doug's report or whatnot.
Correct. Can I jump in a minute now? You brought up some of the problems with, I want to call it problems. At the library, a long time ago, we started, well, basically, what if this happens? How do you handle rowdy people and a whole litany of possible situations? And we had an incident here in the front office where we had, like you say, a rowdy person. And we really need practice, policy, to take care of this whole litany of things. I think as a city, we ought to look at what problems we could have on our ground, whether it's 13 nights in the front office. How do we handle it? What's legal that the police can come in? I mean, this crowd business is a complex business. And the bigger we get, you got teenagers who aren't gonna listen. You got the person in this device that drove in, was he loaded with drugs or was he just lost or what? Obviously, right now you can't describe all the problems we can't. I think we better put together a list of how do we handle some of these problems, even if it seems bizarre.
We've got the meeting policy in place. That's what the last page.
Yeah, but it's not just for tourism and down here.
We're not having a discussion, I agree.
Because it's.
That would be where we need to discuss it.
Getting into a strange thing all over town, and some things look like the same thing, and
Any other questions for Tina?
Just one last one. So I know that Halloween Town literally is still, you know, settling, but when can we expect to see a financial report from Halloween Town?
At the 2023, like, here's the next year coming out, and we did great, so, you know,
But
yeah.
doesn't the new contract require some kind of financial reconciliation report by December?
It does.
Yeah.
100%, yeah, we're working on that right now.
Yeah. And in terms of also a budget that is to have been developed. There's
There's
also
also,
part of
the
it.
contract actually expires at the end of the year too, so there's a renewal.
Well,
component.
no, I think we approved until the end of next year. This was an 18-month one, so it expires at the end of 2023.
And just having John Ellis come in and do the financial priorities really, I think the most important thing. And this revenue,
Yeah.
you know, it's queued up and it's close, but.
Well, I'm still paying some bills that are coming in, which happens after an event. They don't come in immediately, and then as well. There's some income that's still to come in, so I want to have everything in here.
Ready to go.
Yeah, so you have a very accurate picture of what's happening. And then, what else was I gonna say? And we had a meeting on Sunday for tourism for anybody that had questions or wanted to make any comments or concerns, and Jessica was there, which was awesome. And I think that, I don't know, I think the meeting went actually pretty well. We had, you know, some people that are unable to figure out how to contact someone in tourism still, which concerns me. But other than that, there was people that were actually crying. They were so happy with what they did with, you know, their participation in the witches dances and vendors and, you know, and people that wanted to figure out how to work even more with Halloween Town and volunteer and, you know, just and maybe bring in art projects and things like that. So there's definitely was probably about 25 or more people that attended, which was great.
Yeah, and I think Tina did a really good job of just being a good sounding board for even people that weren't great. I mean, or opposed, maybe were opposed to some of the things that happened, but I think you were a good sounding board and you brought up some really good solutions for people.
Yeah,
I appreciated you being open to that and putting yourself out there. for that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good way to connect with the community and
well, and
stay.
educate people, because they just don't even know what my job is,
Yeah.
as we found it.
Well, you answer a lot of questions about like your employees and volunteer hours and stuff, which has always been a kind of a gray area for the public. So I'm glad that you did that.
Yeah, thank you.
Just again, thank you for the report. We look forward to the financial. We know that you've probably done really successful this year by the look of thing and the extreme level of weather that we had.
Yeah.
I'm sure you did wonderful. We look forward to doing that. And we're gonna take a 10-minute break between this, Crystal. Help me with that. But now is our 10-minute break. So thank you, Tina.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We'll return at 4:30.
home with the, you know,
77.
arm and
Forward.
holding down the whole. I'm able to like work it. I gotta go back.
It's this, it's just. That's. Hey, welcome back from our recess. We're going to go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the communication semi-annual. It's cool.
Hi. I don't promise to be super short, but I will try to be as short as possible. So the first half of my report dovetails into Tina's report, which is in-depth look at Halloween Town communications. If you weren't paying attention to anything Halloween Town related, there's a lot of pictures that you can see. And I would say this is a fairly accurate representation of the crowd size every weekend in October. I was there every Saturday, some Sundays, and with the exception of the 2 open weekends in September, this was the consistent crowd size. So post-pandemic, pretty impressive turnout. Okay, so let's talk about media coverage. This does not include any social media coverage. This is just traditional news outlets that we're talking about. So television, newspaper, radio, magazines, and online newspapers. We have a couple of tracking platforms that we use to track impressions from TV and news and radio. What it captured, which isn't necessarily a complete representation of, you know, the outreach or the coverage that we get from media. We reached over 500 million people.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a good amount.
That is a lot.
And unfortunately, when they quantify ad value, it's really hit or miss whether they provide me with an ad value equivalent or not. But I tried to do some averaging and it works out to over $25,000 in free advertising for us from the various platforms. We got coverage as far as New Zealand, Canada, Mexico, Armenia, Australia. And a special note this time around, you know, we got all the traditional, all the Metro TV stations, etc. But what I was most impressed with was Associated Press. We were picked up by them, which they are the, you know, largest conglomerate of news content, probably worldwide, where people from other news outlets pick up their content to republish it.
What's the article? I wanna see it. I can Google it.
Yeah, and then because of Sunmade, you know, we were featured in Parade magazine, we were on BuzzFeed, which is huge online entertainment company, and also Yahoo Finance.
You are correct.
Right, that magazine.
The
And
Sunday
that was for Sunmade.
supplement, yeah, I missed it.
Well, that might have been just their online. This is only capturing, again, like, it only captures content for me that is like published online, so it might also go out in print, but I can't tell. It
Okay.
does, I have one, platform that I use that captures television broadcast. But as far as like the actual published print stuff, I don't have any way of
All right.
figuring that
I'll
out.
listen more.
Yeah. So obviously, as Tina said before, Sunmade partnered with us on an advertising campaign this year. They counted over 1 billion impressions, and that was a few weeks ago. And I've seen in my news capture feed that we're still getting content coming in from that campaign. Let's transition into talking about social media now. What platforms are we on for Spirit of Halloween Town? We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Tina mostly handled a lot of the Facebook stuff. I help cross share stuff if I put it on other platforms, or on the weekends, I'm usually the one posting, you know, like the videos and photo recaps. But she mostly manages that page. I do a lot of the posting on the Instagram page and the story posts on the weekend, and then I do all the Twitter account stuff. This year was a heavy year for emphasizing video over any other kind of content, and that is because all the best practices say that people want video over anything else, and they engage with it more than any other kind of medium. So that was my focus every weekend, was doing a recap video of what happened every weekend. And it takes a lot more effort and time, but it pays out in dividends for the reach that you get. And you can, I mean, if you can see by glancing at this on the Instagram feed on the right, almost half of the post content was video over any kind of photo. And I'll have Kathy has an example video if you haven't been following us on social media of one of the videos. Oops.
There you go.
California.
Good job.
We're produced at least once a week, recapping like what happened on the weekend. But that was a final recap that we did, we wanted to collect throughout the season where everybody was from. Okay, so let's talk about social media. We combined with all three accounts, we have 131,000 followers on all three platforms. That's an increase of about over 8,000 for the year compared to last year. Our reach on social media was about 1.4 million people. Reach versus engagement, let's talk about that for a second. So reach is like how many eyeballs are on a post. People are scrolling, like if it popped up in their newsfeed, that one person reached. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're engaging with it, but at least they're seeing it.
Mhm.
The number you really want to see is engagement. That means somebody either liking it, clicking on it, sharing it, commenting on it. So 66,000 people engaged in our content. That's a pretty great number, especially for a town our size.
Mhm.
What does social media entail as far as workload for Halloween Town? I wanted to do a snapshot of a 2-day period, so October 3rd to 4th. That was an off day for us as far as it wasn't an event weekend. We didn't have a big event weekend coming up. It was a Monday and a Tuesday. People are expecting online that when they comment or direct message us, that there is a 24-hour response time once they initiate some kind of a content contact or question from us. So we received a total of 82 either direct messages or comments on a post from people. A lot of those are questions asking for information about the event. They might not always be, but we have to check everyone to see what people are commenting or asking about. That averages out to about 41 of those a day that we're getting, that we're having to check, which in an 8-hour work week, that's about five an hour that we're getting. So that alone is a lot to manage, you know, just that form of content when you're talking about an event. And we don't really have anybody, I mean, we share the load of managing that. We don't have anybody specifically assigned to social media. The next thing. We like to see these, where are you from? So our top Facebook people come from Portland, Vancouver, and Salem. They're not St. Helens. That's what we like to see on an event page. And on Instagram, none of them are from St. Helens in our top 5. So that's good on that end. If you look down below, we quantify the number of page and profile visits. So that's somebody actively either Googling and going to our landing page on Facebook or Instagram, searching for it and then clicking on it. So it takes more effort on their part. They like actually want to be there to find out information. We had about 75,000 people who landed on our Instagram or Facebook over I think it was a 6-week period. I narrowed this down to. And as you can see on the Instagram page one, which is the one on the right, the spike at the very beginning, that was the most people that went to visit our page. That started September 6th. So that's when people are wanting to either see or start searching for information about this event.
Wanting to plan.
They're wanting to plan,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, so let's talk about everything else then that goes on during that time. I had 2 major projects that were going on during the same time that Halloween Town was going on. Halloween Town launches about August for me as far as the buildup for communications. We get a lot of big media asking, you know, they have to plan their magazine layouts, sometimes their news layouts that far in advance. So they're asking for press kits, they're asking for information. So usually in August, I dust off. We have a press kit of photos and videos that I go through. I refresh them, take out old content, get that ready to go. And then in late September, we launched the comms for the waterfront redevelopment streets and utilities project. Between those 2 projects, I looked at a 9-week period. So beginning of September, and I fudged it. This report's supposed to be through the end of October, but because we had the groundbreaking, I wanted to run through November 3rd. So a few days into November. That represents about 360 working hours in that 9-week period. Over half of that was dedicated to just these 2 projects alone in my time. The majority of Spirit of Halloween Town for me involves lots of photos and videos on event days. Talking to media, you know, if we get media requests for info, I assist with that from outlets. And some social media help with posting and answering questions. And we'll talk a little later about what was involved in the Streets and Utilities project. But that left about 47% of my time for everything else. Is John here? No. If anybody's a number person, these like percentages are a little skewed because I didn't factor in overtime works, but it's a fairly like accurate representation of where I'm dedicating my time during this 9-week span. So this is just a snapshot of everything else that was going on within that 9-week period that needed to be addressed. And I just wanted to highlight, so actually only in September and October, handling, media inquiries. We had heat advisories and cooling centers that were activated during this time period for our community. We had, I did a complete communications overhaul on the website, created like a landing page so that we consolidated all of our social media accounts for all the departments on one page that people can easily find, updated the newsletter page, made it a little easier for people to find. We had the Rip City rally that we hosted at McCormick Park, so helping to advertise that and do photos and video for it the day of. We also had fire weather watch and red flag warnings that involve coordination with CRFR and Columbia River PD. Somebody already talked about earlier, we had the burn ban that went into effect, so we had to delay burning over that time period. Had to cover while Cameron was out. Cameron, my communications assistant, he was they were out for a little bit during this time period, so I also had to cover for them while they were gone. I attended a 3-day conference in Portland. Luckily, the National 3CMA is one of the national communications organizations. Its conference was in person this year again, and it was in Portland, so I was able to attend that in September. Yeah, that was great.
How was it?
Great, I'll talk about that later, but yeah. Christmas holiday ads started during this time too, like that's how far out we're looking in advance to start advertising for events, so had to start thinking about that.
Christmas music on one of the.
I know.
Walmart.
I attended trunk or treat along with Parks and Rec and the library and we passed out, I think 400 or 500 postcards on waterfront redevelopment project to people that attended. And we had a lot of police activity during this time that required press releases. I had to work with Sergeant Eustace on editing body worn camera footage before we could release it for the retirement fire. That garnered a lot of media outreach, but I was pleased to see, I think KGW emailed back and actually thanked us for like pre-editing everything for them. I saved that email because she was like, can you teach everybody else in the area how to do that? I was like, all right. I'm on the back for them for a while. But we also had the screw throwing incident on the highway in Gable Road, which I continue to get inquiries about for updates on that. We had 2 successful canine tracks that gained us a lot of coverage in the community and in the media. And then during this time, Public Works and Engineering also launched their TQ TMDL project, so I will have a part in that's communications related for that component of that project. So how was all that sustained when we've got these 2 major projects and all this other stuff going on? It's hard to be strategic and proactive in our communications during times like this. Sort of that strategic messaging is sort of put on the back burner, and we are paying attention to really what's the critical stuff that's happening. I averaged in a 7-week period, I worked an average of 53-ish hour work weeks. So that's the equivalent of another 2.5-ish weeks of work worked within that 7-week period. And in addition to that, Cameron dedicated the equivalent of what would be 3 weeks of their time to either Spirit of Halloween Town or Streets and Utilities project exclusively. So almost a month of their time then was also really dedicated to helping with communication efforts for those projects. And normally what they're working on is just the newsletter, the general city newsletter is what they help with, and then the city and library social media accounts. So Streets and Utilities communication, that project, what did that all entail in getting it launched? Press releases, media advisories, background information pages. We had requests from Coin News, Oregon, DJC, the Spotlight, the Chronicle. We totally revamped and went through the website for all the pages to make sure it was consistent with updated information as we were getting ready to launch the project. We worked with Alan at the Makerspace. Thank you, Alan, to get some free drone footage of the site ahead of construction work beginning, so we can hopefully utilize that throughout the project. Before pictures of the site up until yesterday was still out on the site, getting some before pictures now that we have a clear idea of where work is going to start. We hosted a business and neighborhood meeting for the area people in the end of October. We had the groundbreaking ceremony, created a new newsletter to make sure we have a dedicated area where not only with this project, but with upcoming projects that we have going on, we have one channel where people can get all the information that they need for that project. I think we have about 250 people subscribed to that newsletter now. So for less than a 2-month time period, that is high numbers for a government newsletter. So that's good. Also worked on creating and designing and printing and distributing postcards to encourage people to sign up for the newsletter. Specific flyers for business and neighborhood meetings. And then we put information on the utility billing statements, letting people know that the project was coming and sign up for the newsletter. So for a more global outlook, because this is supposed to be a report over everything from May until October. These are the total numbers for that time period. Everything that we track had an increase in output. I doubt those numbers will likely decline in the next 6-month report. And that's just because we have so much that happens with Halloween Town support and with launching of a major project. Local media posts will definitely, you'll see a decline in the next reporting period. The newsletters, you might actually see an increase with the launch of the waterfront newsletter project. So we'll probably be putting more of those out. And then who knows with news media requests and contacts, what's going to happen with that. And then Cameron wanted to make sure that you were aware that we had great increases in the library's Facebook reach and the city's Facebook reach over the same time period. I think that the city page in particular, that 51% increase just is a reflection of how much we have going on at the city, how much info we're pushing out. And it's great that we have more engagement from people too. So other projects and focuses over that 6-month time period, all of our events that go on in the summer and into the fall, it was our first year that was the return to normal post-COVID. This was our first year that we were able to fully have our events the way that they had been in the past. So it was a lot of emphasizing information over and over again to let people know, yes, it's happening, yes, it's back to normal. Worked on the planning committee for Citizens Day 2022, which was a huge success. That was a big effort. We had updates on Central Waterfront and Industrial Business Park, as well as the developer RFQ process during the same time period. So it wasn't just streets and utilities that I was working on. We did a campaign for Parks and Recreation Month, which happens in July, and Water Quality Month, which happens in August. So work with those departments to highlight some of the services that they provide. As well as, weather messaging over the summer is getting more and more complex and often as we continue to be hot and dry. And yeah, the 3CMA conference, that was great. It was 3 days. They had a lot of great speakers. Coincidentally or luckily, a lot of them had a focus on development projects. So I made sure to attend all the community development highlight projects, and they had great ideas that we were able to implement when I came back for our project. And just networking with people from Hillsborough and Battleground and the region. So that was good.
Don't forget about our American Festival.
Yes.
Yes.
That happened too. And we had goals.
Second place digital, Hayes Graham.
Yeah.
The essay was Brody Parson, first place at state, and Ellie Luke for the total award,
Yeah.
first place at state. So we had second at state, first at state, and first at state. I'll put that out there.
That you're proud of it.
So what's up next for the next 6-month period? Streets and Utilities project is obviously continuing for the next 2 years. I met with Amara from the Main Street yesterday, and we are going to collaborate on doing business highlight profiles once a month that will likely launch in winter 2023, like January, February 2023, where we will reach out to all the businesses in this area. Combine it into, focus on the work happening, but also tell us about your business, why you're in St. Helens, what you can offer St. Helens, and why you love being here and what you hope for the project. and hopefully that outreach they feel is, you know, another way that we're supporting them through construction. We have the Christmas ship parade and not tree lighting, but holiday celebration that will be happening not too far off, December 10th. Mark your calendars. We're already lightly starting to advertise that. I think we did the first advertisement of it this week on social media. But we'll advertise it more heavily once Thanksgiving is over. I have already reached out and scheduled new counselors to come in and have their photos done and start working on their bios, so that's all ready to go come January 1st or 4th when they're sworn in. We'll likely have some winter weather messaging that goes out once freezing temperatures hit. We have to talk about frozen pipes, snow plow routes, etc. Hopefully we don't have any flooding, but we've got templates for that as well. We'll continue to provide assistance for the TMDL project that engineering is working on the comms end. That involves producing a couple specific brochures that DEQ is mandating that we create, helping facilitate a community event that has to happen, and some website page creation and updates with content. And then hopefully the Riverwalk project will be able to launch once funding stuff is figured out, summer or fall of next year. So that will be another major project that will launch. Possibly the public safety facility next year as well as on the horizon. And if you've been paying at all attention to anything social media related, Twitter is now owned by a I don't know if it's private, but it is now owned by Elon Musk. A lot of changes have been happening. We'll see what happens with that. I'll be monitoring that. You know, there was the great like Facebook scare of I don't know how many years ago where they said everybody was getting off Facebook because they didn't like what the corporation was doing, and everybody's still on Facebook. So I anticipate Twitter will likely be the same once everything's settled down, but who knows? We'll monitor and roll with it as changes happen. And then just with the major projects we have ongoing and the ones that are on the horizon for next year, I mean, what does that mean? The next 6 months, there's going to be a lot of communication, priority, time management again. We're going to have to juggle what's the priority, what gets our attention, and do the best that we can.
Yeah.
It's a round of applause.
I agree. Excellent, excellent. You're an excellent example for a professional. And I'd like to highlight the female, you know, working and being a mother and managing all this communication and what you've done to all. It's a huge undertaking. Just one project she's talking about will consume you 24/7. And I've came here on weekends and guess what? I've seen her working on multiple occasions, just running around shocked. I'm like, what are you doing?
So you bring up a good point. She was working here late one night and was getting ready to walk back over to the babysitter on 4th Street to get her kid. And so that, scheduling all that is a huge undertaking, and you do it very well. We have a very robust communication, and Crystal, you built, you know, we have built, but you have been the key person in doing it. When I bring this up at the Oregon Cities
That's what I was gonna say.
or with the mayor's conference, they are so far behind. A lot of cities
get to
are so
brag.
far behind.
You guys do what?
We have this, and,
Communications.
I would like to also thank John too, because, you know, he kind of pushed you towards that direction, the council also, you know, and you continue to step up, and we push you a little harder, and you just kept going with it, and yeah, there's a lot of hours there. I see that, you know, we may need to discuss that, you know, in the future, and I've expressed, I'd like to see you have some drone capabilities, you know, and moving forward with our communications. That's one area that I think we're lacking.
By the way, on the drones, make sure that extra money for the drone goes to the library where your operator comes from.
Yes, so yeah. Anybody else wanna comment?
We just appreciate you. You're awesome. Don't leave.
I know John's got.
No, I had accolades in my report later, but and Crystal has been at League of Oregon Cities presented some of the past conferences, and I think some of the other conferences as well, and, you know, we're a city that kind of punches above its weight in a lot of categories, and this is, communications is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
A lot of high degree of professionalism and it shows.
Well, the most thing I like about it is consistency. It's a unified message from all of us. You know, that it's all about the citizens, and that's what I love about it the most. Is that we don't have people going out and getting what we're doing muddy. It's clear. This is, no, go to the city website page, go to the Facebook page. This is, you know. And so that's the beauty of it, I think.
Well, the fact that you care about like response times, like that's important for people that live here, you know, to hear back from somebody within a day. And you care about that, so thank you.
Crystal, I'm gonna add some more to your load though. And this just came up with building a strategic plan for the library. The question came up, how do we communicate the library to the Hispanic? Do we have translators? And we don't. And I spent some time going over first to St. Frederick's, talking to some of their people. They have a big Hispanic. And they aimed me at the community assistant over to the school library who's does the Hispanic work there. And she was telling me that a number of things in the Hispanic culture don't match. And like for the library, most of the Hispanic community, 90% just doesn't understand libraries because the little villages they came from don't have libraries. But the communication problem of how do we talk to the Hispanic community, both in the way we present content and in language, is something to a great extent we've overlooked. We definitely have it at the library. And I don't know how well we're doing within the city. But we were surprised talking about, here's this growing community that we really don't know a whole lot about. So how do we, it's more than language, as you're well aware.
It's more than language, and there are some nuances to it. I've sat through a couple of webinars and sessions before about you know, translation. Services alone, they're expensive. It's something I the council, you know, wants to in the next budget cycle look at investing a little bit in. I mean, it's not astronomically expensive, but compared to my budget, it would blow my budget out of the water. So, but there are nuances to it. You can't just put it through Google Translate and expect it's going to come out accurately. And there are nuances when it comes to, you know, like translation of the word citizen to us implies something that it doesn't necessarily to the Hispanic community. To them, citizen is a negative connotation because of immigration issues. And so you really need a certified nuanced translator to get it right.
Really, from what I see here though, not only you need a person with money and money for that person for the Hispanics, but your load is getting to the point where we're gonna drive you into the ground. We need another person like you. I mean, communication is not putting out a mimeograph sheet once a week anymore.
Well, I think that Cameron does help out quite a bit.
We're still
If you
Something,
brought on board, I mean, I
Crystal,
don't know what I would have done, but
yeah. And you let us know, right?
Yes, that's what I was getting at. Please like let us know.
We know that month was busy, extraordinary, and it may have just been perfect storm, but we know that is a busy month, so let us know. In the future.
I mean, I think like my point in highlighting like what's on the horizon is we've got a lot of big projects on the horizon.
Yes.
I've had a conversation with John about trying to build in a comms budget to these major projects so that we have a little more resources when it comes to these major infrastructure projects. That doesn't buy you more working hours though, but it at least helps meet a little bit of that need with some of this.
It makes a good point, honestly, because when we're looking at like contractors to come in and we're looking at bids and stuff, part of that is a little piece of it is, are they going to communicate with the public? And so we're thinking about it, but we're not actually, you know, building it in fundamentally.
Well, the way that a contractor communicates with the public, I mean, it gets built into the streets and utilities project, but the way in which a contractor, you know, we want them to be communicating, you know, with the people they're impacting, but the way that their outreach might be perceived is different than the way it's going to be coming from the city and the way that we would talk to our community. So you need both, you know, you need us to be doing it as well as the contractor.
Yeah, and I seen that team in here meeting yesterday.
Yeah.
I popped in for the-
But in fact, you're becoming short of people versus the amount of work you have to do.
I mean, definitely, I mean, but you've been hearing that from all departments.
And I think it's time to start heavily thinking about it, like. The amount of load that we've got with Allen at the makerspace, it wasn't expected to be this heavy this quick, yet. Because of its goodness, it has gotten. The communication, because of its goodness, has gotten. It's nice being a leader of the state's communication. But it's also puts a heavier load on how you have to do things.
Thank you, Crystal. We appreciate you.
Yeah, I just again, will re-emphasize on your professionalism is spot on. I know that, for a little bit of news media that I have outreach with, that, they are very appreciative in, 26 particular, even though they messed up on that, not us. But, yeah, it's spot on, so. Fully professional, thank you. Thank you. All right, so our next item is a report from our city administrator, Don Walsh.
Yeah, keep going with the communication, just for
Sure.
couple sentences anyway, and one of the communication strategies we've worked towards is prior to taking communication really seriously, every department was pretty much on its own, doing its own thing, and we started Crystal out at a half times communication effort and to help facilitate that. But what we worked into or aspired to was a centralized communications where we're coming to one single point. Communications are funnel, uniform, consistent. We speak with one voice, and it's grown from there and quite well. And you know, now we're managing 12. How many social media sites are?
There's a lot out of it. I don't even know the number.
That means we're tracking, we're doing pension, and there's expenses related to that, and it's just probably small work. But it's good, you know, it's all good, a good thing, and this is growing and carrying on to help take over some of the pieces. And I see Crystal's role as this communications person, being a director, kind of a position where you're orchestrating some of the things rather than doing the work, because there's so much work to do, and less people. Blessings to her and all she does. I don't know how else to put it, but it's a lot of work and they appreciate it.
Yeah, I've taken photo shoots. I'm not getting my report, but I've taken photo shoots with the daughter, you know, because yeah, just because, not with the daughter, but the daughter, she'd bring her along because she doesn't have the time to. Yep.
Teach you how to run a camera.
Yeah.
Right, they're so vulnerable, you can take them everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the first council meeting after the election, so congratulations to our newly elected. We've been meeting with Councilor Sandine, Council-elect Sandine, and Councilor-elect Gunderson reached out for onboarding, orientation, new elected officials training, try to have a good solid process and a good running start to be up to speed. They can do that in January 1, and that's all good things. The groundbreaking ceremony was fantastic. The crowd was amazing. There, in large part,
Sun was out.
sun was out. It was a perfect day. A couple days later, it would have been just horrible with all the rain and raining blast, but we hit the window just right, and communications, Crystal, Rachel, Cameron, all the public works staff, Mohammed's team, really it was a good celebration. A lot of the groundbreakings I've been to over my career, pretty not that great. They're kind of boring. They're too special. It was special for me. Finance director recruitment is open. First call for review is going to be on December 1st. It's on our website. It's on all over the everywhere, actually. I had to all over the country. John Ellis, thank you for providing support during the transition and his dedication and professionalism to, you know, because he didn't have to do this. This is something he elected to do. You know, it's really appreciated that he's bringing back and getting confidence in our budget and our budget assumptions. And, you know, effectively, we've had somewhat of a hiring freeze since the budget was adopted to really understand what's going on, because when it's kind of a soft, you know, there was some assumptions that positions were cut, or maybe they weren't. We found out that there is some budget capacity, so there's positions in public works that people have just left or retired that we want to fill. Mohammed has 5. We're looking at
Utility,
yeah, the 3 of those positions to move forward with that. And but they're efficient positions that were but already budgeted, so.
yeah, these all existing positions in the budget that were kind of, you know, on, off. Not to go into the details, we have 5 positions total. We will look at filling immediately 3 out of 5 and continue working with John Ellis to make sure we're also supportive of every other thing before we look at filling the other 2. Where we can kind of, you know, what's the end game with the budget and see how that goes. From there, we'll revisit me and John and talk.
Provide more services, so. So that's all good. The whole team heard a lot today about the Halloween town and the wrap up and the forthcoming, the decorations are out here earlier this year, which is great. December 10th, people have mentioned the Christmas ships are coming. The Christmas tree lighting is gonna be lit. The plan right now is to light the tree when it arrives. Most folks are whoever's bring the tree. Santa will be arriving not by fire truck, because that's been about a 50-50 hit and miss over the years, but it will be by the.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Yeah, it's every year it's been planned, but it rarely does end for it.
2 years ago.
Yeah,
Crystal,
2 years ago.
screens or what? Yeah.
but I think
2 or 3
the
years ago.
Santa coming in on the train is gonna be
Oh, yeah.
gonna be really well received.
That's if the engine's still running.
So, we had them on a regular engine 3 years ago.
About the train engine?
I'm talking about the train engine, the
Oh.
trolley engine.
We were talking about
It
fire.
should be in tip top shape by then, so.
Okay.
We're gonna bring back the burn barrels, the years that we did, the first years we did, early years that we did burn barrels, when Crystal and I were the ones running, organizing all of this. We're,
Kathy's confusion, you stand around there. by the fire.
No, I was thinking he meant burning, the burn period.
oh, no, that's on the, I do have that. No, we brought out garbage cans and that fires them. And it was terrifying because we thought everybody's gonna burn their fingers, but it worked really well and everybody was super happy about it.
People didn't touch the fire?
They,
Wow.
No, they were low enough in the barrels.
I know, I'm just-
they get really hot.
Yeah.
And they really like it. And,
Yeah.
So we're gonna bring that back and,
You can get money for an educational grant.
Yeah.
Don't touch.
yeah, it is, you can only do it once, so. yeah. So that should be a good night. Jim Fisher is gonna come back, the music, he's really entertaining, it's not. But
Grant.
Tom Grant, that's right. Jim Fisher.
Jim's great though, too.
I've been meeting with the Marine Board, I met actually yesterday morning and talked through the issues on the physical. All 3 docks have challenges with the rails, some of the structural components, and we're working through to get funding to do that. Funding's a little bit limited, so we're gonna look to some other alternative sources like Travel Oregon and other places that recognize this. Sand Island is one of their, it's recognized in our destination readiness plan as a destination, as a part of their destination and be eligible for grants. We're gonna be pursuing resources for that, but it could be upwards of $500,000 to replace some of the rails, structural repair, so. A lot to do, but if we don't take care of them, they'll just get worse and. Monday, Mohammed has organized weekly meetings with the contractor at MEI, weekly to on track and on tone, and Crystal was there as part of that for the communication piece of that. And what we learned is that the initial focus was going to be on the intersection, but we're looking at areas more towards the river, property down there towards the other end with pipe installation and things like that. So the business interruption piece that we're really concerned and want to communicate really well about is going to be not such an issue through the holiday season. So there's going to be no interruptions to that. And we're going to get signs made up. They're already ordered that the people can do their QR code and get signed up for the newsletter, and that will tell them the up-to-date information. So holiday season will be free as far as business interruption goes.
But shortly after that, I think be getting benefits, right?
It will hopefully be going full steam by then.
Yeah.
And we continue the focus to be 100% on reducing the interruption for businesses as much as possible. So there is no, there will always be interrupted access. I always tell people when you go to the doctor get a root canal, it's discomfort, right? But the end goal is great. There will be some disruption, but we will do our best to limit as much as possible. Yeah, once it's done, will be great success.
I'll give you a happy thought. We're gonna have 18 inches of snow twice. And it's gonna stay cold while you're in construction.
Wonderful. I'm not looking forward to that.
So the every year is not every year, but Toy and Joy every year has come to the city and asked for a donation. We've given some sort of donation and utility billing credit of $100. I think the last 3 years at least, we've done 2 $100 credits, and I don't know if there's council action to that. I gave them soft approval for that. I wanted to at least get a consensus of the council that's okay.
Yeah,
I think
we're all with that.
it's
Yeah,
not,
I actually think that's kind of minimal.
we could do more.
7,000.
Okay, that is too much.
Oh, okay.
I would maybe I'd like to see an increase in that, in my personal opinion, but
The number or the amount, the value of.
yeah, maybe like another one, third one or something.
3 times 100.
Where's John? Let's ask him. It's gonna.
Yeah, do we have?
Yeah, it's a credit, so it's.
I think it's a nice thing to do for someone during the holiday
We're
season.
pretty too, I think.
Yeah.
Go to 3.
2 to 3.
Go to 3.
Woo-hoo.
Sure.
$3 $100.
3 $100. Really. We're not having a meeting, so we're not doing carrying issues forward, so we're just gonna say this is a consensus.
Yeah.
Okay, all
I
right.
don't need formal. Right.
John has the approval.
It's under 50,000.
House Bill 31 for the 15, the House Bill addressing the management of houseless population in our community. That goes into effect in July of 23 is something that the Planning Commission has picked up as far as they have a committee on that. I've been participating. But our planning department, Jacob, has a couple of projects and he's going to be getting to them. And there's no real model code out there on how to handle this, so we're looking to our peers and seeing how they're handling things, and we'll give this a lot of attention here towards first part of the year. Because that's what
So what would I see coming down the Multnomah Channel? Let's be as hard as we can on this, because I think the crush is gonna be bigger than we anticipate right now.
well, as hard as you can is a
I know.
there's a yes, there's a lens of humanitarian lens. There's a lot of layers to this.
Which is hopefully what the
If
planning commission
the pendulum is too far one way or the other, you're gonna be subject to challenge, and then it'll be deemed invalid, and then we'll be.
Agreed, but it's growing faster all over than we anticipated. That's really the message.
We're on it. We're gonna talk about it soon.
Stan Quixote came earlier today to talk about the extension of the burn ban. I don't think that needs to get memorialized in the minutes. How we're gonna handle that. And
It's already done. I already got the press release out.
okay.
I thought he said he needed a day.
Their chief who was supposed to approve it, he's actually out on medical leave right now, but their comms person was able to message him and get a response back, but in the future, it would be nice to have a few days leave because we do have to coordinate with them and they are an agency that needs to sort of like co-sign off on that.
Sure.
But yeah,
Mhm.
it's done, it's announced, it's.
Perfect. Good job.
So, and just for communications, I'm gonna be out at a Oregon City Managers Association Board Retreat tomorrow and part of Friday, so. And the budget committee appointments, yes. Yes, bringing on. The result of the elections resulted in two potential board vacancies, one on Recreation, Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
And the budget committee, so there'll be some upcoming.
Subject some parks and Mark from budget.
And the rest of that I forget, so.
So the Parks and Recreation Commission, we kind of got that handled. I'm gonna meet with Lynn tomorrow about how we're gonna go about, because they've already done a press release, and so they have 3 applicants to fill 2 positions. But the Budget Committee, Garrett Lyons' term is expiring, and I wanted to know whether the council.
Yeah, could do both at the same time.
No, if we don't, I wouldn't redo the Parks and Rec, since we already have
But
applicants.
no,
We have
both,
two positions
yeah,
open.
Henderson and Lyons.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Garrett, from what I can tell, he's not, serves 2 full terms, so he could technically be reappointed.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
you definitely have 1.
yeah.
If you want to be
Yeah,
reappointed.
if interested, yeah.
I can check with them on that.
Yeah.
Well, I think if he technically meets the requirements where he could, I think we should just open them both up. And let people, the process, do the interview process again. That we did prior to for that. Because we took that over, but we let Parks still do theirs. But we took over I guess we are the agency over that though, instead of appointments from individual. So it's like it used to be.
Right.
I think that'd be a great idea, just to. Not opposed to Garrett, reappoint Garrett, but I think it'd be. For the process, is bring both out there and see who applies.
Yeah,
I mean, definitely just look at there and just say we're recruiting
yeah.
applicants, not for 2 positions, but just for.
Yes. Yeah.
A committee.
Yes,
Okay.
good way of doing it, yeah.
And then lastly, just if we have an executive session, it should be fairly brief.
So let's go on to council reports, Councilor Topaz.
I have a number of things today. Starting off with the library, we have our monthly library committee meeting, and we're well into figuring out with Rachel's guidance, the strategic plan for the next 5 years. And 2 things came up. One is, how do you handle undesirable people doing undesirable things in the library? And the next part was, how do we enlarge what the library does and who do we connect with? That led into, how are we handling communication with the Hispanic community? The first question was, if somebody speaks Spanish, do we have translators? And typically not all the time in the library. That led us to St. Francis. And they have a fairly good sized Hispanic community, and they do have translators and they're willing to help. They aimed us at Rosa over to schools. And so the 3 of the groups are working together. But the observation of how we present things, as Krista pointed out, between the communities, especially communities culturally who really stay away from the government, if you would, has to be worked on. We know at the library, language, what you see, a lot of the people did not know that you have things like computers, those things that we have at the library. That was one thing we had to. Continuing the library, Monday, the 22nd, I guess that's Monday, our new youth librarian arrives, she's going through all the vetting, all the double checks, so we'll be here on the 22nd. There's that, we had I and Jenny Demshaw had a meeting, quote, a public meeting, the DEQ, on the contaminated waterfront of the mill. The meeting was mainly DEQ people, 7 of them, 3 of us. And the comment at the end of the meeting, well, this, what we just talked about doesn't go on the record, so you have to write something to be put in a record. Unfortunately, and this is my opinion, Ginny did not reply. She gave the job to Jacob, which is her boss, bureaucratically necessary, but I think some of the nuances of what was said at the meeting would not totally transfer to Jacob. John wrote a report, he wasn't there. Basically, what they're saying is we, DEQ, and Boise are gonna decide this, and their description of what they're gonna do technically is very, very poor. I wrote a critique, I gave John one, and since then, I've had a 45-minute interview with Jennifer Peterson, as well as Jeff, the head of this operation, and they're surprisingly inadequate in understanding the technical problem of what's happening under the water. When you ask them about, did you look at the data that Wolf Forster developed about the land when they put their test scores, they had never even heard of it. So information that DEQ gets in one department doesn't go to the other part. That was rather disappointing. So that's that part of it. Now, on November 4th, there was a Ethics Commission meeting, and they ruled the executive meeting that we had here with the U.S. Ecology was illegal. Mayor Rick Schultz was guilty. Council President Morton was guilty. Councilors Jessica Chilton, Patrick Berkeley, and Stephen Topaz were guilty of attending an illegal meeting, an illegal executive meeting. These were voted on. There was quite a discussion, mainly because it's the second time. And the other thing that was a big deal was the fact our attorneys were there. And so they're still discussing that. Now, one of the things that was also pointed out in the conversations of both of these meetings, it was stated that there was going to be public meetings. The first one is supposed to be a public meeting about this in August of 2019. And the latest is supposed to be one this summer in 22. Neither one of those happened. That didn't set over very well. The other comment, this sort of make John Ellis happy. The first meeting we had at Mo Forster estimated when to do this conversion of the lagoon, we'd have to put $70 million into changing the sewer plant so we could do the rest of it. Now, this is the end of my term, and I wanted to point out some things that I've documented while I've been here. We documented that there are 2 illegal executive meetings. We had a complaint by Matt Brown, assistant to John Waltz, against Council Topaz. We're inquiring about the drainage problem in his neighborhood. Topaz was found correct. The problem that Matt Brown described was thrown out. Now, the thing about the neighborhood is the Supreme Court of the state of Oregon ruled that a number of properties were being damaged with that problem. I'm leading to something else. That's just a detail. We had a complaint to the ethics board by Matt Brown. When we, Council Topaz asked for the amount of money being spent on the reservoir, that wasn't even heard. In fact, as we've come to find out, they're going to have to rebuild the reservoir. If something had happened back, that was in 2019, we might have saved the reservoir. Okay. We also had this is again documented. 30% overrun of the Godfrey Park drainage, that was an extra $1 million because of incorrect engineering. Now as I said, the Topaz's I&I project by the Supreme Court pointed out that there was a problem, but it was illegal to speak about it. The federal court ruled against that, also ruled against the limitations on Topaz's engineering.
You're talking about yourself, when you're
Yeah.
talking about a project back in 2009, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
Okay.
just want to make sure.
Yeah, but
Because you were referring to Topaz, I was wondering.
but the
Talking about
the
yourself.
real problem was the definition of what an engineer is by Oregon as compared to me, because it involves some other engineers, so.
Some clarity on that.
Okay, now the I&I project, which included a whole bunch of sewer and drainage, including the north of on 4th Street over on West, there was a problem there.
Same the 2009 project.
That's the 2009.
Sure.
Yeah. But one of the things that was supposed to be taken care of was the sewer system on Sykes Boulevard, as well as the storm drain. That was also way back in what the I&I was supposed to handle. And those are gonna amount to, well, estimated $15 million for the sewer repair, 20 million for the storm drain repair. Again, part of the I&I project. One of the problems with engineering problems like the reservoir, the fact that they happened 10, 20, or 50 years ago, if they're wrong, they're still wrong if you don't fix them. And basically, the person who's wrong is the city, not a person. Okay. Now, also documented, Councilor Topaz was censured for bringing to the ethics board the illegal executive meeting. That was brought here.
Excuse me, that is not true. I'm going to correct you right there. You were not censured because you brought something to the ethics.
I've got a whole bunch of lists there, but we'll leave it. We'll
But
just,
that was not true, and you even actually voted in favor.
yeah,
of
I did.
the
I
investigation of
did. I
yourself,
absolutely did.
For the record, which is actually true.
Yeah, well, you go look at it. Yeah, no, I don't disagree, but the public hearing.
Well, I'm letting you have your
Well,
report.
let's go. Okay, now,
If you would please continue, if you continue to report, if you could really double check yourself, and make
Yeah,
sure you're taking that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I don't have to interject.
well, if you
That
don't,
would be great.
if you listen, when the system was designed, okay. 17 unnamed and unidentified workers said he intimidated them. Bringing public hearing where you're not allowed to face your
Again, not,
there's our,
again, not true. You were asked for 9 months by Jill Gilbreth to you and your attorney to respond to the accusations. And you had a 9-month period and we had to continue to move on because you continued.
may I finish?
Well,
May I finish?
I'm gonna correct you as you go because there's so much here.
Let me finish. The public hearing did not allow the public to attend, and the electronic audio broadcast was not audible. That was confirmed by lawyers.
That's not true.
That's not true.
Okay.
Public meeting.
It was upheld.
No, nobody was allowed in, because I had 3 people come and they were turned away at the door. I can get those people if you want. Okay. Now, the other thing that caused problems, which we've had, which has been documented, questions raised by Councilor Topaz in the correct procedure for selling the mill property, fortunate to be used for a grow facility, never were answered. The court ruled relatively recently, November, this was July of 2021, that the sale was invalid. Sale was null and void.
That because of a couple-day period that we missed.
Well, it's, I say,
Continue on.
now, the part of the procedure was an offer for $3 million. The city cut it back to $1.5 million. And Topaz asked about how much rent was paid, and as far as we can find out, $1.5 million rent was not collected. Now, in November of 2021, the lawyers of Boise went to court and said, because of the invalid sale, that we owe them $100,000 in legal costs. That's still an appeal. So that's kind of the end of my report. I just have 3 thoughts to leave. A lie doesn't become the truth, wrong doesn't become right, and evil doesn't become good because it's accepted by the majority. When you have something to say, silence is a lie. A further society drifts from the truth, the more it will hate those who speak it. I thank you.
Councilor Shelton.
I don't have much to report. As you guys heard, I did go to the tourism meeting, the debrief from Halloween Town, and I think it's a good way to just get started on doing that as a norm, post Halloween Town and Halloween Town, just so that businesses and community members have a place to just talk about it. And I do think Tina handled it pretty well. There was a little bit of back and forth, but for the most part, she did handle it really well. So I'm proud of her for doing that. And it's, you know, it's an awkward position to put yourself in sometimes. You know, kind of being a sounding board for some complaints and comments and a lot of questions, but she handled it well. And I think it's just a good standard for us to have going forward. So that's what I have to do.
All right. Councilor Berkeley.
Nothing really helped to build a little spur trail at Nob Hill, the last word party up to one of the overlook benches. Yeah, other than that, nothing extremely.
Okay. So I would just like to start off by congratulating Councilor-elect Gunnarsson and Sunbeam, and look forward to working with you guys.
And yourself.
Yes, and myself, of course. I want to throw a shout out to Chris Dahlgren, Eric's wife. Our thoughts are with you. I need to sign this card. Dahlgren's has been a new part of this community for a lot of years. There was a Dahlgren builder supply down here on the old waterfront, the wood docks. It was made out of wood. That started. That's how far back the Dahlgren family goes to our area.
And
Yes.
during one of the fire
Yes.
dynamite removed from. Sorry for interrupting, but yeah, there's some exciting times in our history.
Yes, it really was. So when I got reelected, I was actually contacted by the newspapers, and number one on my list, asked me 3 things, was the hiring of a financial director. As we all know, finances run the city in the day-to-day operations. The riverfront project was number 2 in the disruption to business, so I'm glad to hear that we're moving forward strides on that. And then number 3 was continuing to come up with strategies for marketing our industrial properties with neighboring cities and the port as the leader, and what that might look like. And we'll wait and see kind of what the economy does, but I think that's something that should be on the forefront of all of our minds as far as trying to actually market it, like get some money and some hope behind it.
Yeah.
So Christmas ships, December 10th. But we'll have another meeting between now and then I'm glad that Doug is not here because we need to talk about a date for a 16-year service party. Talking about canceling our December 21st because it's so close to Christmas meeting. If people will still do that, I'm not sure.
The finance director recruitment
Yeah.
has December 21st set as the day that you
Okay.
would do your.
So that's fine. That's fine, but how long do you guys think we'll spend on that? Do you think we'll have enough time to do a party for that same day?
What do we have to do?
Oh, 16 years, we're gonna.
No, not Doug, the finance director. Oh, no. No, not that. Is it how many,
I believe it'll be the finalists.
Yeah.
That they'll be doing. Yeah, I would say 3 or 4 probably.
Probably 4, one always seems to drop out of everything.
Okay.
So I'd like to also put that on our agenda as far as the, for, if we have anything to adopt in that evening session, get that out of the way, and then,
So doing it after the regular session.
that's what I kind of thought, so people could have time to talk and. Yeah. Snacks and pop the champagne and squirt all over that.
Sparkling, yeah.
Up Gary on.
Yes, or something.
But I guess like 16 years is a huge commitment. You know, I mean, that's a long time to be sitting in these meetings. We all know what we go through and that's pretty impressive. And so that is something that maybe you the staff could work on for us. Like I said, Plant Body's not here because we'd be offered to talk about it for a bit. So now we'll set that, we'll just go with the flow and let staff kind of work that into our agenda somehow.
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
Everybody be familiar with that.
Okay.
And then I know that Topaz brought up the homelessness, and I do think that House Bill 3115 is something that we should still be looking at very closely and could be maybe discussing real soon. And so that potentially could be coming on the agenda anytime soon, but we'll make sure we have the right information before we get here. So.
Yeah, staff will be giving us a lot of attention here.
I've got to go back. I had a conversation with Eric Dolgren about 2.5 weeks ago. He still had a good attitude about what he didn't like about the city.
Yeah.
He, to the very end, I wouldn't say he was in great shape, but I would say he went down faster than I would have expected for the time I spent with him.
Yeah, I know he was in bed for quite a while there, so.
Well, his diabetes has been working on it for a bunch of years.
Yeah, so I know he was in bed and
Yeah.
had been bed for quite a while, so again, thoughts on Chris on that. Okay, so now we'll be going into executive session following this under RS 1926602E. Property transaction and H consulting litigation, consulting with counsel. So with that, we are adjourned.